Chapter 461 Under the Moon Battleheim Imprisonment Play. In the bullfighting arena at the moment, the battle is fierce. The group of slave sword fighters who were defined as criminals and imprisoned in the bullfighting arena, led by Rebecca, are engaged in a fierce exchange of fire with the soldiers of the Don Quixote family. Although in terms of ability, one plaything of these arena killing games can fight 10 opposing soldiers, but they can only find weapons that can be used by sword fighters who are imprisoned here. In the face of the rows of sharp muskets of the Don Quixote family soldiers, most of the time they can only be passively beaten. Damn, who can think of a way to rush out? We'll be surrounded by this. While the slave sword fighters were communicating, a large number of soldiers appeared on the corridor behind them. Before there was time to blame the man's crow's mouth, several gladiators carried their shields and erected them, covering their companions behind them. Ding ding dong. The muskets kept firing on the shield, sending bright sparks. The danger is temporarily lifted, but the situation is still dangerous. But even so, the sword fighters did not give up the fight. They bit Kiva and persisted, looking for any chance to leave here. In the middle of their siege, a pink-haired girl wearing an ancient Roman soldier-style helmet was closing her eyes, feeling every move around her. That was Rebecca of King Riku's lineage, and it was the reason why they dared to escape tonight. Not long ago, Rebecca felt a few breaths away. She checked it out carefully and found that those were the Don Quixote cadres in the bullfighting arena. The simultaneous explosions told Rebecca that this was an opportunity. Those enemies that Dressrosa had been waiting for months have finally invaded. Although Dressrosa has been so peaceful on the surface recently, anyone who cares can find that the atmosphere in Dressrosa has obviously become tense in recent months. That kind of situation where the cadres were always patrolling the streets only happened a year ago when the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters, the hero Garp, arrived. After being disappointed by the inaction of Garp, the hero in the biography, Rebecca chose to forbear and continued to wait for the next opportunity. Moreover, this time is obviously more serious than the last time, so serious that every person who enters the country will be carefully checked before they can be released. Tonight's explosions and the departure of the cadres told Rebecca that the time had come. Even though she didn't have the power to defeat Doflamingo, she felt she could still do something for the oppressed people of Dressrosa. These slave sword fighters who were locked up for rebelling against the Don Quixote family were undoubtedly their best helpers. That group of guys really isn't here anymore. Come on, get out. Now that he and the others have been fighting for half an hour, the officials of the Don Quixote family still haven't appeared. This situation made the sword fighters finally feel relieved, and saw a glimmer of hope of escaping from here. It's slim, but it really exists. Rebecca, we'll open the way for you. You take them first. A sturdy gladiator stood up, put down his weapon and picked up the shield next to him. The sword fighters are trained with one sword and one shield. Putting down the sword means that they have given up the swordsmanship that the sword fighters regard as their life. You. Knowing that she couldn't cry, Rebecca bit her lower lip firmly and nodded. Understood, please. It is impossible to leave without making sacrifices, and now sacrifice a few of them to seek survival opportunities for more people. Rebecca understands what to do. Ha ha ha, this is the daughter of the royal family. The gladiator laughed loudly, and then stood shoulder to shoulder with several companions, one holding two large shields, and launched a charge against the Don Quixote soldiers who were lining up to shoot in front. Shoot, shoot, kill this mob. A guy with the appearance of a captain gave an order loudly, and then he was hit on the head by the edge of the shield, and his body fell to the ground softly. But the sword fighter who attacked him was not feeling well. He lost the block of his shield, and several bullets hit him, splashing dazzling blood in the darkness. Don't stop, keep going. The thick shield wall did not stop, and when someone fell, someone made up for it. They built a long wall with their own flesh and blood, opening a path to freedom for Rebecca and others behind them. The soldiers who were knocked over to the ground did not survive, and the sword fighters who followed closely stabbed their bayonets into their stomachs, venting their fear and hatred. The young Rebecca was very uncomfortable with such simple killing. She covered her mouth and followed the staggering advance of the large army. Suddenly, a shrill scream came from the front, and the pungent smell of blood came along with the strong wind of the corridor, causing Rebecca to stumble. Gollum. The shield wall slowly stopped moving, only to hear the sound of drooling. Because in front of them, a claw covered with scales tore the soldier on the opposite side to the waist, exposing himself to the moonlight. What's the situation? Where did those bastards go? Ah! Jinchuriki column spewing from his hideous head, and fresh Yuhi's flesh and blood remained between Kiba's teeth. Drake stared at the group of exhibitionists in front of him with a pair of emotionless vertical pupils, especially the one surrounded by each other. The pink-haired girl stayed on her body for 3 seconds and then complained. What? It turned out to be a group of perverts. Who are you, pervert? The sword fighters suddenly became excited and rushed forward with their weapons in hand. But it's just a Tyrannosaurus. Are there not many big men who died in this arena? Don't think they will be afraid. Mr. Drake, can you get your feet off? Cough. Suddenly, a voice came from under his feet. Drake looked down and saw that an undead soldier who had rushed too fast before was accidentally stepped into the stone, and his head was stuck in the crack of the stone, unable to move. Sorry. Drake quickly retracted his human form, and calmly put on his clothes in front of a group of people. You are the pervert, right? Sure enough, the sword fighters were instantly excited. Cut! A group of exhibitionists stripped all the girls' clothes off, and they're not pervert. Drake turned over Byakugan and pointed at Rebecca sitting on the ground, complaining faintly. The sword fighters looked in the direction he pointed, and found the only female among their group of rough men. I don't know why, but Rebecca, who was accustomed to this kind of dress in order to perform the sword dance, suddenly became hot all over, and shrank her body together in a twist. Suddenly, the sword fighters seemed to understand something. At this time, Drake added to make matters worse. Is this the Battle Under the Moonheim imprisonment play 18 inches in the biography? I don't see that you guys are very good at playing. Shut up, you pervert exhibitionist. Immediately, the sword fighters collapsed collectively. This basin of sewage was poured up, and it really couldn't be washed out by jumping into the sea. Ask for a wave of subscriptions. Please support genuine reading. Before starting the update today, I still want to say a few words to you. This idea was proposed a long time ago by my book friend, Super Big Coffee, but it has been busy between work and family, and it has not been put into action until now. That's right. That is to open a single chapter for subscription. Some people say that your starting point for writing a book determines the results of this book, and what you write with a playful mentality cannot be approved by the Watchman. Dashu understands this point, but does not agree. Because some people say that the starting point can never determine the ending point, and an imperfect start can only determine the obstacles and difficulties you will face next. After all, is there anything in this world that can be concluded? Under the influence of these self-contradictory views, the paradox of nothing is absolute tells Dashu that only the process is the most important. Whatever the purpose of starting a book, when you really like the job, your mindset will naturally change. Dashu is a shameless example. He started writing a book with a cheerful mentality. Later, he incorporated this matter into his habit, and finally it became a kind of persistence. It is this kind of persistence that supports the big tree in the state of completely no manuscripts, maintaining the data of 2 changes per day, and writing more than 1 million words now. From the new book period to the development of the plot to the middle and late stages, Dashu has changed from a useless newcomer to a hard-working coder. Think of all kinds of romantic pleasures in the past when I was idle, Dabaujian KTV mixed with bars and fished girls, and so on. Then look at the fat man who is sitting quietly in front of the computer and typing. I really have a hard time believing that this change will happen to me. After 2 years of running in the morning, I didn't have to make up for my gym card. After half a year of coding, Big Tree has changed from a sturdy guy with six-pack abs to one who is now about the same number in length, width and height. Even if you limit your calorie intake, your weight will skyrocket. I just want to cry without tears. So, For the sake of the big tree, can you please support the genuine reading more, and click on the subscription with honor. I know that many pirated websites actually have charging functions, and some paid reading books are even more expensive than the original ones. Dashu, the writer of The Starting Point, tells you that this money, the ghost knows whether it has fallen into our pockets. Anyway, the monthly revenue of genuine readings brought to Dashu is more than 10 times higher than the data of other channels. Some authors with good data are even 100 times higher. That is to say, the money you pay to support the author on other websites, and the money you donate generously as a reward, actually only a small part of the money actually falls on the author you support. Because there are too many unauthorized websites, they secretly copy the works of The Starting Point for profit, take it off for a while when the limelight is tight, and put it back on again after the limelight is over. The behavior is simply outrageous. The big tree is not to attract popularity for The Starting Point, and I am not worthy to do such a thing. Just wanted to tell you guys not to be deceived again. It is a glorious thing to come to The Starting Point to see the genuine. You must know that this book has 1,000,000 words. In fact, the whole book is only 30 yuan, and the sub-volume subscription is only 10 yuan, which is not enough to buy a pack of cigarettes, and the single chapter is only 10 cents. In this day and age, a dime is just an insignificant number for the watchman. However, this dime is what almost all writers value most, letting them know that their hard work day after day is worth it. To be honest, in the two-dimensional classification, the 30,000-plus collection has no fine works, and the big tree seems to be one of the rare ones. The real man standing at the top of the pyramid. Dashu rarely issues single chapters, and sometimes only asks for leave with a few words. From the opening of the book to the present, this is the second serious single chapter. After selling, crying, talking about the big truth, the purpose is only one. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. Chapter 462 Gather them. The camera turns to the other side, and the group of soldiers separated from Drake finally came to the front of the toy house after a lot of hardships. They looked around and finally came up with a surprising answer. Looks like Boss Drake is not here. Hey. How can it be repaired? Why are we in front of them? The toy house is a key facility in Dressrosa, not only connected to the huge underground trading port in Dressrosa, but also the more important Smile Factory. So as soon as they appeared, they were discovered by the soldiers under Don Quixote stationed here, and immediately a row of bullets shot over. Tacitly, the few undead soldiers who did not know when to sneak into the team were pulled forward to block the bullets, and a group of people quickly rushed into the corner to avoid the ending of being beaten into a sieve by the bullets. What now? We can't seem to get in. An undead soldier silently took out a bullet from his stomach, and then bounced it on the opposite wall. Look at the pervert in the middle of the other side, he should also be a cadre of the Don Quixote family. Just relying on the dozen or so of us, we have to fight. The undead are strong, but they can't use domineering, they can only use their own bodies to resist when facing physical attacks. And now there is a dark cannon at the gate of the toy house, and there are also a large group of people around with muskets aimed at it. They don't really care if they rush hard, they won't die anyway. But the group of Drake's living men were not so lucky. Under that kind of intensive firepower suppression, it will definitely be blown to pieces. Who can live and want to be dead? Can't play women and can't eat food. In addition, the strength of the pervert wearing a baby clothes is unknown, and he will cause losses for no reason at that time, so he is waiting to be scolded. Actually, if we don't rush, it seems that we can't run. A guy raised his hand and pointed to the crowd swarming from the corner of the wall. Brother Doflamming is really worried, he has mobilized so many people to guard here. This part of the military force may have exceeded 300. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, a bullet shot out, directly opening a hole in his head. The rest froze for a while, then silently hid his body behind the box to avoid being destroyed in the battle. Anyway, dead can be resurrected. For them, the dead are not scary. It doesn't matter, if it goes on like this, it will be completely wiped out. We will lead the charge, and you will follow. Several undead soldiers stood up and prepared for battle with their weapons. At this moment, the manhole cover of the sewer in the middle of the alley suddenly popped out, and one by one black shadows bounced from the inside and landed in front of the soldiers. "Sir, do you want to go in?" Staring blankly at the group of little ones under his feet, a soldier took out the information distributed before and carefully compared it for a few seconds. "This is the Dong Tata clan that Lord Loya said. It turns out that there really is. There is a story about a camel in an Arabian fable. An owner has an old camel, which works hard all day long. Once the owner wanted to see how much cargo the old camel could hold, so he kept adding and adding, but the old camel still didn't collapse. Finally, the owner thought if he had reached the limit, so he gently threw a straw on its back. Unexpectedly, this straw caused the old camel to collapse. This story is the familiar, the straw that broke the camel's back. Now the protagonist is not the old camel in the prophecy, but a country named Dressrosa. But the similarities between the two are that the camel owner knew that with the addition of cargo the old camels would collapse, and Doflamingo knew that with his tyranny in Dressrosa, so would his rule will collapse. But they all made the same choice, constantly adding cargo to the camel, trying to test the camel's tolerance limit. Now it seems that although the starting point is somewhat different, the ending is not too different. Especially the last thing that was pressed on the back of this old camel, Dressrosa, was a heavy cargo that was as heavy as 1,000 pounds. Boom. Without giving Gradius a chance to continue speaking, Crocdar stomped his face hard and stepped his head into the slate. Looking at the terrified Don Quixote soldiers around him, K-Rochdal waved his hand and spit out 2 words lightly. "Kill all." After receiving the order, the undead army bypassed its own commander, and fiercely raised the butcher knife in its hands towards the soldiers fleeing everywhere. They had to flee, because those powerful cadres were powerless under the attack of the other party, and hardly made any effective counterattacks, and the family cadres as powerful as Gradius fell to the ground. They only rely on the banner of Don Quixote to be so arrogant. Now that the cadres have fallen, what can they do as ordinary people? Just run away. After all, looking at the opponent's posture, he was not prepared to talk about such issues as prisoners. Draining the blood from his hands, K-Rochdale picked up Bellamy's head and sneered, "How are you feeling now? This feeling of being ignored and abandoned by others?" Rochdale and Doflamingo are both heroes. Although there is no evil and cruelty on the other side, Rochdale knows very well that gangsters like Bellamy are absolutely invincible. Because if it were him, he would never want an unsatisfactory gangster as his subordinate. As a result, what did he find? Bellamy is using the Don Quixote family logo. Excluding the possibility that the other party is a relative of the Flamingo family, plus Bellamy's inexplicable worship and fanaticism, then the answer is obvious. Doflamingo was just teasing or taking advantage of him, and Bellamy, who was being deceived, didn't even know about it. Playing with people's hearts, K-Rochdal is not a layman. "Kill me, kill me." Bellamy, who had only half of his face left, kept mumbling, and the fighting spirit that would never go out even if he became an undead vanished, and he could no longer see a single trace of it. "Sadness is greater than death," referring to Bellamy's situation. "It looks like it's broken. Tisk, it's really boring." As he spoke, K-Rochdale threw it away, and Bellamy's soul drifted away in the wind. This is the authority given to them by Roja. As a Death Knight with cutting-edge combat power, he can wipe out the souls of the rest of the undead. Clap his hands and stood up, K-Rochdale took out the phone bug and dialed it. "Pass my order, gather all those guys, I'll try to see if Brother Doflamingo is here." "Yes, great commander." At this moment, a soldier came running over and stomped and saluted at K-Rochdale. "Report. Violet has just passed through the secret door below the palace, and is now rushing to the 2nd floor of the palace." "Oh, has the little girl finally started the treasure hunt?" K-Rochdale grinned and greeted his subordinates, "Stop the search," and all of them rushed to the bullfighting arena. "We have to give people some hope before she can dig out the treasure." Quote Understood. Chapter 463 Soldiers Never Tire of Deceit. Dressrosa, inside the bullfighting arena. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, Drake looked up without tears. You mean, my subordinates didn't come here at all? That is to say, I've been busy for so long. Surrounded by undead and living soldiers, sword fighters look at me, I look at you, and finally turn to Rebecca. Yes, but thank you for your help. If it weren't for you, we don't know how much sacrifice we would have to make to be free. Ah, it's easy. With a sigh, Drake stood up, turned and walked towards the stairs. Since they're not here, I'd better look elsewhere. You'd better get out of this country. This time we're here with an order to destroy Don Quixote. Not your life or death. How big is a Dressrosa? To say that it is a country is actually just a medium-sized island. Working under Loya, Drake is very aware of the power that Rockdale possesses. Once that guy makes a full effort, the pollution range will be calculated by kilometers. Rebecca was determined to keep it, but seeing the blood-stained weapons in the hands of the dead soldiers around her, she had to silently put down her hands. The opportunity came a little too suddenly, and it came too shockingly. She never imagined that Dressrosa under the rule of Shichibukai would be attacked one day. And a bunch of dead people came. And through the information revealed by the other party in a few words, it seems that they have achieved results that they could not even imagine. What qualifications does she have now to join forces with each other, or ask them to help her save the country? Being able to save the lives of her companions is already the limit of what she can do. Blue blue blue. At this moment, the phone bug in Drake's arms rang. He took out the phone bug, and the messenger on the other end quickly reported the situation. Boss Drake, the commander asked us to gather all the cadres of the Don Quixote family in the bullfighting arena. Are Diamante and others still alive on your side? The phone bug has its own hands-free function. Not only did Drake hear these words, but Rebecca and the others behind him also heard it clearly. Then, they suddenly covered their mouths in horror, their pupils shrunk tightly together. Diamante. The top cadre of that bullfighting arena. As slave gladiators, those of them who do not know the name Diamante are equally aware of the meaning of the name. That is one of the top cadres of the Don Quixote family, representing the top combat power of Doflamingo. However, even such a big man was defeated by the opponent. How holy are these people? Not caring about the reaction of the little people like Rebecca, Drake was stunned for 2 seconds, and then instructed his subordinates, "Go and see if anyone is dead, I remember you were buried alive before." But speaking of bullfighting arena, where did I seem to have heard of this name? Suddenly, Drake turned his head suddenly and looked at the frightened group of sword fighters. You said before, what is this place called? Ah, if it wasn't for the same name, this would be the bullfighting arena. This is really a coincidence. The underground port of Dressrosa, with the departure of the flamingos, has completely come to a standstill during this time. Loya's revenge is an inevitable result, and Doflamingo is not naive enough that the other party will let go of his economic lifeline. Because it was uncertain when Loya's attack would come, in order to prevent the port from being attacked from the inside by the enemy, all trading activities were stopped. In addition, a large number of soldiers are deployed here, and those weapons that are ready to be sold have been released from the seal, allowing the soldiers to take and use them. Of course, no one expects them to be able to repel the enemy. Their task is to ensure that the message is delivered when the other party attacks. A small team of soldiers under Drake followed the tunnel dug by the Dongtata people and climbed all the way, and finally arrived at this huge underground port a few minutes later. Hey, little people, what are your plans? Looking at the densely packed troops in front, a group of people hurriedly hid behind the cargo. Although he successfully entered the inside of the toy house, from the perspective of the opponent's defense arrangement, the underground is much more cautious than the ground entrance. If the previous attack on the ground ended up being beaten into a sieve, then when the attack on the ground is now, it is estimated that it will be broken into pieces. The kind that can't be fought back. And the most embarrassing thing is that they don't even have a team leader level expert. In the face of the group of Don Quixote soldiers armed to the teeth of Kiba, no one can run away. As a result, everyone's hope was naturally placed on the little people who brought them in. Facing the question, Leo, the captain of the Dongtata clan, thought for a while and said, "This is our fourth reconnaissance. We have searched the rest of the places, but we haven't found our companions. The rest of the places are except the Kadri Tower. It's the factory over there. If nothing else, our goals are the same. However, with so many soldiers, we can't rush through if we want to." An undead pointed out the problem. The tunnel of the Dongtata people is well located and concealed enough, but it is on a diagonal line with the Smile factory. If they want to enter the factory, they have to go through most of the port and the canal in the middle. Not to mention how much firepower is deployed along the way, not to mention the Dongtata clan, a fly will also be smashed to pieces. But still have to try it. Leo clenched the embroidery needle in his hand, and the other Dongtata warriors also took out their weapons, such as table knives, knives and forks. It's hard to wait until this opportunity for all the Kadris to leave. If you just give up, will you be willing? No. The atmosphere of the Dongtata clan was high, but this did not bring much change to the severe situation. Just as Leo was about to lead the troops to attack, someone's eyes lit up. "By the way, can we pretend to sneak in?" Great idea, but how to mix it up? Seeing a group of people looking at him, the soldier smiled. "Even a small group of us got lost in the melee with Boss Drake, and also met a few of your undead army guys. So there are more than us. So many Don Quixote soldiers, can they really get acquainted with each other?" So. Of course you new dead people don't know about Dressrosa's fairy tales. We just need this, then this, and finally that. A group of people chatted together for a long time, and finally smiled tacitly, and began to look for targets among the patrolling soldiers with bright eyes. Soon, a team of patrolling soldiers walked over, specifically checking the gaps in the cargo and the dead ends of the walls. Don Quixote will naturally not leave these places where people can hide easily, and people will come to inspect every time. The group of soldiers inserted the bayonet into the straw as usual, and slowly penetrated while examining, and then. Ding dong, clang. "Hey, what's wrong with you? Did you spot the enemy?" The movement here immediately attracted the attention of the rest of the people. The artillery turntables were aimed at this place, and they would fire mercilessly as long as they found any abnormality. However, at this moment, a soldier dressed like them climbed up from behind the cargo with his hands up and shouted, "Don't shoot, it's us. The cargo collapsed just now, nothing abnormal." "Really?" The soldier who asked the question pursed his mouth impatiently and spit in disdain. "Take care of my newcomer, this is not a safe place like a palace. And next time I fire it right away." "Yes, I understand." At the same time as the soldiers answered tremblingly, Leo and the others quickly took off the patrol's clothes and changed the soldiers' clothes. Chapter 464 Nature. Under the order of K. Rockthal, the undead army gave up searching for the remaining enemies, accelerated all the way, and soon reached the landmark building of Dressrosa, the bullfighting arena. Greeting his subordinates to throw an unexpired Don Quixote cadre on the platform in the middle of the arena, K. Rockdale looked at Drake a little strangely. "You shouldn't. Stop, I don't want to talk about this again." With a depressed look on his face, Drake stopped K. Rockdale from continuing to speak, and threw Diamante and the others who were about to die from the high platform. Among the cadres who were buried alive, only Diamante, the top cadre, and Rao Ji, who was highly accomplished in Dwayne Quan, were not dead yet. "Well, I still have to rely on me to go out." Without provoking Drake, K. Rockdale smiled and said to the soldiers, "Put the Jinchuriki column upright, remember to tie the iron chain firmly, and I'll tie you up if you run away." "Yes." Hearing K. Rockdale's threat, the soldiers didn't care whether they would strangle the wounded to death, and with the force of their dead hands, the thick iron chains were firmly tied to the prisoners who were breathing more and less. Drake, who was unclear about what K. Rockdale did, pointed to the center of the stage and said, "Then what are you going to do?" "Do what?" K. Rockdale let out a cigarette and turned to look at the empty auditorium around him. Don't Doflamingo like this kind of game very much? Then let's play it too. Games. Derek suddenly remembered what he had heard from the sword fighters before, and looked at K. Rockdale in a daze. You wickedly funny, you are not much worse than Lord Roja. At this moment, a group of undead soldiers pressed a few prisoners and came to the two of them. Report. Commander, the live broadcaster you want has been brought in. On the ground in front of the two of them, a man and two women fell there tremblingly, looking at K. Rockdale with frightened eyes. Through the few words of the undead soldiers, they knew that the tall man with a gloomy face in front of him was the leader of the attack on Dressrosa, and the boss of this group of dead people. The actors are in place and the announcers are there. Now all that's left is the preparations for the live broadcast. Rockdale called out one by one, counting the things that had been sorted out. But it's still a bit difficult for us laymen to do a national live broadcast. Speaking of which, K. Rockdale leaned down and brought his bloodless gloomy face to the man wearing a Madara in front of the fat man in the helmet. Can you do me a favor, Mr. Gaz? Yes, I know how to arrange it, please let me join in. The murderous intent in Krokdar's words was obvious, and Gaz naturally didn't dare to disobey him. Hearing the other party's request, he didn't care whether it was reasonable to live broadcast in the middle of the night, and nodded hastily, for fear of slowing down. Satisfied with this, Rockdale gave a look, and Gaz immediately went to work with the two female announcers. Watching a few people leave, Drake touched his chin and asked, "Do you think Doflamingo hasn't left Dressrosa, but is actually hiding here? So you want to use this method to force him to appear?" For any leader of the organization, if his subordinates are played by the enemy like this, it would be completely unreasonable for him not to appear again. This has nothing to do with whether Diamante and the others are loyal or not, whether they are willing to give their lives, it is just the attitude that an organization should have. If Doflamingo shows up, then Rockdale is sure to bring him back to Cross. On the other hand, if not, then the Don Quixote family will exist in name only after the live broadcast. As I said before, Rockdale is really not an amateur when it comes to manipulating people. Kill the heart first. This is a conspiracy of Yuhiguago, no matter whether Doflamingo appears or not. After this time, the Don Quixote pirates will become the representative of shame on the sea. What Loya asked for was the complete destruction of Don Quixote, and the faithful Krokdar did a great job, didn't he? For Drake's question, K. Rockdale did not answer. He turned around and walked towards the platform, before spitting out two words lightly after a long time. Guess. Drake. What do you want to do with this bastard? It's a hurry to wait online. With Gaz's help, preparations for the live broadcast were quickly completed. With the order of K. Rockdale, the big screens in various squares of Dressrosa suddenly lit up. Whether it's the common people or the Don Quixote soldiers who escaped by chance, whether it's Rebecca's group of sword fighters or the Dong Tata clan in the underground port, at the same time, there was no more noise in the huge kingdom, and everyone was stunned. Looking at the screen, at a loss. Why does the screen appear? Why, a bullfighting arena? With such doubts in mind, everyone stopped the various incidents in their hands and looked up at the screen. Soon, the face familiar to everyone because of the broadcaster's work appeared on the screen. Gaz put on his funny helmet and swallowed nervously. Then, the residents of Dressrosa, good evening everyone. I'm sorry to disturb everyone in the middle of the night, this is the bullfighting arena, and now there will be a special match here. Race, _. Countless people chewed on the meaning of Gaz's words, and then suddenly widened their eyes in horror. What did they see? On the central platform of the bullfighting arena, wasn't it the cadres of the Don Quixote family they were familiar with? No, that's right. As you can see, today's contestants are the officials of the Don Quixote family. Although he was still very scared, as the explanation gradually deepened and the enthusiasm for the work surged, Gaz's speech speed and emotion still increased. This competition is a survival competition. The cadres on all platforms will fight each other until only the last person is left. Only the person who survives to the end can win the chance to survive. Gaz broke the jar and roared loudly while holding the microphone. Whether the other party is a capable general of His Majesty or a beggar kneeling on the roadside begging for money, as long as they stand on the ring, then they have the same identity. Quote. Gladiator. The blood and slaughter you love are coming soon. You will see the powerful cadres fighting each other. Now let me hear your shouts and cheer for the players you support. Silence. Dressrosa fell into absolute silence. A soldier stood in the street, took a step back because he was too shocked, and kicked a small stone into the lake. Boom. The stones rolled into the lake, and in this quiet night, the sound was tantamount to thunder. Then, there was applause. Whoa. Come on, Lord Diamante. Kill them all, Rao Ji. Ms. Jorah, you are the prettiest Miss Universe. People in the distance heard the applause and raised their hands. Then, like a prairie fire, the applause spread rapidly, and in an instant, Dressrosa turned into a sea of joy. Countless people raised their hands and cheered for their favorite players. As Doflamingo himself said, any kind-hearted person has the nature to be mad and tyrannical when he sees blood. The residents of Dressrosa at the moment are just bringing out the nature, he said. Chapter 465, a lively live broadcast. The battle to be held in the bullfighting arena ignited this night, and the crazy flames burned in everyone's heart. The overwhelming cheers penetrated the sky and the sea, and seemed to spread the enthusiasm to every corner of the world. Even though the audience was empty, Gaz felt an unprecedented scorching heat. He stood up excitedly, held the microphone and continued to explain. Now, let me explain the rules of battle for everyone. At the same time, the phone bug rolled its eyeballs and delivered the picture to the platform in the center. There, a thick and dark iron Jinchuriki column stands in the middle of the platform, and under the illumination of the light, it exudes the hard breath of steel to the fullest. On top of this iron Jinchuriki column, thick chains are tied to it. One end of the chain is tied to the iron Jinchuriki column, and the other end is wrapped around the cadres who are so familiar to the residents. The rules of this battle are that there are no rules. Gaz's eyes flashed with crazy sparks. Any props and attack methods are allowed, as long as he can stand when the rest of the people can't fight, then he is the winner. And, as you can see, the cadres who have just experienced the battle are all injured at the moment, and the one who fell to the ground stopped breathing. Stop breathing. So doesn't that mean he's dead? The atmosphere calmed down a little for a while. Everyone, look at me and I will look at you. I don't understand why there are dead people on the platform. At this moment, Gaz seemed to understand the doubts of the audience, and gave the camera to K. Rockthar, but this is not the end. Now let me solemnly introduce the launch of this competition, the commander of the Undead Army K. Lord Rockdal. Army of the Dead. Hearing this name, the residents suddenly remembered the fear they had experienced before. The massacres carried out by the dead soldiers were definitely the lingering nightmare of all the people in this life. However, there were also quick responding guys who understood, and they looked at K. Rockdal with an unprecedented frenzy in their eyes. Even if you die, you have to fight this kind of battle. They have never seen it before. That's right, it's what you think. Gaz shouted loudly. Everyone has a chance to be resurrected. Don't look at the serious injuries they are now. When they die, Lord K. Rockdal will die. Humans come back to life and back into battle. Dry blood is the limit. No, let's throw away the old ideas, everyone. This is a battle that will continue even if you die, an unprecedented battle. Whoa. For a time, Dressrosa's clamor began to boil again. Then now. Raising the wooden hammer high, Gaz aimed at the bell on the table and slammed it down. The battle begins. Clang. At this moment, there are already countless pairs of eyes watching the game screen. Everyone is looking forward to the expected hot battle, cheering for the players they are optimistic about. The dark side of human nature is vividly expressed at this time. The human beings who walk in the gray area have the characteristics of both. As long as there is a little chance, they will shift themselves in the range of black and white. The so-called saints and demons come from this. The bell of the battle had rang, and Diamandi stood up on the ground, spitting out the dirt from his mouth. Oh, Lord Diamandi will be the first to do it. His strength is obvious to all. If he wants to do it, the others will have no chance. No, there's one more. Hearing the sound of iron chains rubbing against the ground, Gaz suddenly turned his eyes and looked at the figure on the other side who was slowly getting up. That's Lord Raoji. Is the battle going to start? Both sides are watching each other at the moment, as if observing where to start. Standing on the platform, the panting Diamandi turned his head to look at Gaz. The anger in his eyes was like a real flame, and he bit Kiba with hatred towards Gaz. Then, Diamandi roared loudly, "What a joke. We won't do this kind of monkey-like thing to show you rubbish. If you want us to fight each other, I would rather die here." It's the same with old men. Raoji came behind Diamandi on one leg and assumed an attacking stance. Although they are the defenders of the bullfighting arena, their previous battles were with outsiders. All they did was a game of killing, and then watching the ignorant commoners applaud themselves and others to satisfy their pervert sense of accomplishment. However, this does not mean that they are willing to stand on the platform and fight with their companions. This kind of thing is fundamentally different from the time of the fight. What an amazing situation. Lord Diamandi and Lord Raoji are not willing to fight. Gaz continued his excited explanation. So in the face of this situation, what should Lord Rockdale do? Diamandi's words spread throughout Dressrosa with the live broadcast, and soon, all the citizens waved their fists to condemn the behavior of the two. The one who stands on the arena is the fighter. This is the eternal law of the bullfighting arena. Even these words were engraved on the wall, which became the reason for the swordsmen to fight again and again. However, now the maintainers of this group of rules are unwilling to abide by the rules. What a shame this is. Go to hell, Diamandi. I really saw you wrong before. The trash who dare not fight, go down. Get off. Even with high walls, the boiling grievances were clearly heard in everyone's ears. Looking at the two people with firm faces on the platform, Rockdale smiled. He grabbed the microphone beside him, grabbed the signal from Gaz, and grinned. This kind of thing can't be done by you. Look back, those dead guys are full of fighting spirit now. Ah. What? Diamandi and Raoji turned their heads in shock. Sure enough, Derringer and the others, who had died before, were slowly getting up from the ground. Their eyes were full of Yuhi, and they were locked on them. Not everyone likes to fight. As the commander of the undead army, I know this better than you. Rockdale said, but it doesn't matter, we need obedient slaves, not subordinates who have their own ideas. For those who don't obey orders, besides punishment, we have another way to let them join the battle. Speaking of this, Rockdale slowly raised his hand, and an inexplicable wave spread out, quickly sweeping the entire venue in a spherical shape. That is to erase their minds and turn them into killing weapons. A creepy sense of danger flooded the hearts of every living person, and Rockdale gathered a huge amount of magic power, grabbing a mass of red Yuhi-colored energy in his palm. It's like this. Puff. The energy group was crushed, and suddenly burst into countless fireworks, which dissipated in the air. Obviously he didn't see anything unusual, but Diamandi still felt a chilling chill penetrate into his body, causing him to shiver. War frenzy. Rockdale sneered, stretched out his fingers and said, now, tear them apart. The voice fell, and the resurrected Dellinger lowered his body and charged towards Raoji with his head buried in it. He himself has the physique of a hellfish man, and at this moment, his physique is stronger than that of ordinary people after he has become an undead. The slender left leg made a sudden mistake, and Dellinger twisted his body and kicked Raoji's stomach fiercely. Bang! Suddenly, a lot of wind and sand was stirred up on the field, and this extremely destructive kick directly broke most of Raoji's bones and knocked him off the wall at the edge of the auditorium. So, cheers, Dressrosa! Rockdale announced loudly, and groups of undead with the same eyes as Yuhi raised their weapons and roared wildly. Chapter 466 Inches Drought, Jack. Da Flamingo is back. The battle finally started, and Dressrosa started to clamor again. It can be expected that no matter how history develops later, the battle tonight will be remembered in the hearts of all the people of Dressrosa, and it will become a legend forever. Facing the tireless and extremely fanatical attacks of the undead, the first to fall was Rauji, who had already lost a leg in the face of the extremely flexible Dellinger. Except for a few effective counterattacks, he hated killed by a companion who grew up watching him. And the boxing technique he was proud of was completely useless against the dead body of the undead. Dellinger shook a few times, and the broken bones were reassembled and continued to join the fight. Go on, Diamante, kill them all. Are you a fool? They're dead. That's right, so come on, shred them. The battle of the undead is hotter than that of the living, because they are tireless and pain-free, and as long as they can move, they will never stop fighting. Diamante, who was seriously injured, didn't support it for too long. The thick chain was not something he could cut off now that he was seriously injured. There was no way out, no escape. Diamante only lasted a few minutes longer than Rauji, and then his throat was bitten by Mahabe, who was also a cube army. Losing the living target on the field, the undead roared in the sky, and then stopped moving instantly. The audience of Dressrosa was puzzled by this, and Gaz also explained in a timely manner, "What's the situation?" After killing Lord Diamante and Lord Rauji, the undead warriors seemed to be unable to move. Already. In response, K. Rockdal sneered, and took out the great white-bone sword from his back, the blade of which was shining bright blue. Don't worry, the undead just follow my orders, I'll let them start. As he spoke, K. Rockdal pointed his sword forward, stirring up the magic in his body. Stand up, slaves, keep fighting. Huh. 2 dark green ghost fires condensed from the tip of the sword, and then quickly submerged into the corpses of Diamante and Rauji soon. Under everyone's shocked gaze, Diamante and Rauji, who were bleeding more than a basin, stood up again. It's just that at this moment, their chests will no longer be stirred with their hearts, and only the tyrannical Yuhi light is left in their eyes. Roar. Yang Tian let out a roar, and Diamante had his hair disheveled, leaned over and rushed towards Rauji, who had been fighting side by side before. His action was like a signal flare, and the rest of the undead received orders and rushed to the target closest to him. The atmosphere was immediately fiery, and the undead squeaked the iron chains, fighting on the small platform that would not stop even if they died. Sitting back in his seat, K. Rockdal asked to stroke the hilt of the great sword of the undead, frowning tightly. Could it be that Doflamingo is really not here? Flamingo has stated many times in public that all he has now is this group of subordinates. If anyone dares to laugh at or hurt them, then no matter who it is, he will never let him go. The purpose of K. Rockdal is also here. Since Flamingo attaches so much importance to his family, then the national live broadcast now, no matter where he hides, he should have received the news. As a result, until now, no soldier has reported any abnormality. With Doflamingo as a person, he will never tolerate his subordinates being treated as playthings. In other words, Doflamingo should really not be in Dressrosa at the moment. This is a headache. K. Rockdal snorted, the factory must be destroyed. Without the artificial devil fruit, the flamingo will be more hated by Guy. Coupled with Loya's gradual layout of the new world, no matter where he hides, the new world has no place for him. Coupled with the goal of an underground port, the gains from the arms trade were lost, and the Don Quixote family was unable to support their rule in Dressrosa, and the largest intermediary businessman, Joker, in the dark world would also exist in name only. The passage of time completely vanished. But the owner asked to bring the flamingo back. What should I do now? Looking up at the sky and speechless, K. Rockdal felt a feeling that he had never experienced since he became an undead. Egg hurts. When Dressrosa's live broadcast was in full swing, a large ship was riding the wind and waves at sea and rushed to Dressrosa overnight. On the outstretched white sail, a logo stood out. Just like the Straw Hats, the pirates will not only hang their own pirate flags on the observation deck, but also draw the enlarged pirate group's logo on the front sail, so that they can be seen clearly even from a distance. Chu, in order to show his strength, so as to deter Xiao Xiao. It's just that it's different from the general pirate group logo. The logo that appears at this moment, even in the pirate flag that was as many as the Crucian carp crossing the river in the era of the great pirates, still represents a power that must not be offended. Because of this logo, it is the logo of the 100 Beasts Pirates. Belong to the 4 emperors of the New World of Kun, the pirate group with many beasts and guys. And at this moment on the deck of this ship, standing is the flamingo who was identified by Crocodile as not in Dressrosa, Tianyasha, Don Quixote da Flamingo. Before that, no one knew where he went during this time. Even his confidants, such as Torapal and Sha Tang, were placed on an island halfway by him, and he went to the depths of the sea alone. Judging from the pirate ship he is currently on, Da Flamingo is looking for the beast's guy a lot, and now, this ship is the reinforcement he brought back. That was the truth. Standing on the deck with him was a tall, burly, rough man with a kiba-like decoration on his head and shoulders, and a metal chin on his chin. This person is the confidant of the 4 emperors guy, and one of the 3 great disasters, with far-reaching reputation, drought, Jack. Da Flamingo and Guy Da made a deal, in exchange for more artificial devil fruits for help from the 4 emperors. He has already made up his mind, as long as he repels Loya's attack, he will enslave all the Dongtata clan and become his own slaves to provide Guy with more goods. Anyway, this thing has been done 900 years ago, and now he is just bringing history back on track. Blue 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 blue. Looking at the phone bug that Da Flamingo called for the 4th time and still didn't get through, Jack snorted disdainfully. I hope your enemies haven't run away. If you let me run for nothing, I'll tell you what cruelty is. In the face of Jack's unfriendly threat, Da Flamingo's face did not show anything unusual. After a moment of silence, he put away the phone bug, and suddenly burst out laughing. Relax, those guys won't leave until they find me. I'm worried about you instead. If they get killed, Guy will trouble me more. Not being able to convince Guy to take the shot himself is to be expected. But there is only one of the 3 disasters, and to be honest, Da Flamingo is not very optimistic about this. Of course, if possible, it would be good to let this reckless man attract firepower and run away with his subordinates. As pirates, isn't it natural to betray each other? Chapter 467 Furious Da Flamingo. It's just that it's different from the idea. Judging from the current situation, it seems that his subordinates have become more fortunate and less fortunate. Whether it was right or wrong for him to come back this time, Da Flamingo didn't have a clear answer in his heart. But so what? He had more than Jack in his whole cards, and if it wasn't necessary, they might as well not show up. After all, the opponent is the Ice Dragon, Loya, and no one in the whole world should be willing to fight against it. At the same time, Da Flamingo also remembered Moonlight Mariah, who led the matter to this point. If he could solve Jones quietly, then Loya's hatred would only be placed on Mariah, and he could be alone. But there are not so many ifs in the world. Moria is so confident that he was used by Loya and honestly rolled into the ambush of the other party. He also detonated the explosive rock in this ambush, severely injuring Loya's mentor Zephyr and turning him into a crippled person. This hatred, Da Flamingo has no way to solve it. You must know that Loya is a guy who is not afraid of the sky and the earth. A lieutenant general, he was bold enough to kill the Tianlong people, and later in Alabasta, he killed thousands of pirates in the form of dragons, making the countless pirates hate it to the core. But because of this, you can know his character. Just using the word daring is not enough to describe him. He even said that not long ago, he destroyed the Navy headquarters that had stood for hundreds of years, and defected from the naval forces. Now this kind of character decides to make a move, just a Tianyasha. Chiwahai, dragon people, Joker. That's really not enough. The big ship continued to move forward, and soon, the group docked at the eastern port of Dressrosa. Looking at the group of soldiers who fell to the ground in miserable death, the blue veins on Da Flamingo's forehead suddenly bulged. In fact, as he expected, he still came back late. It looks like the enemy has already attacked. Jack pulled out the shotel knife around his waist with a fierce fighting spirit, and his whole body was full of murderous intent. Go forward and kill all the enemies. Following Jack's order, the crew members of the Mammoth responded loudly and rushed towards the platform high in the port. Looking at their movements, Doflamingo was also preparing to step forward, but at this moment, a sharp scream came from the front. The cry was so shrill that even he who was used to seeing bloody scenes could not help frowning. What happened? Where is the enemy? Jack raised his weapon angrily, and a bunch of his subordinates died before he saw anyone, which made him lose face at all. Seeing that the boss was angry, a soldier rushed over soon. He pointed tremblingly in the direction of the port, swallowed and said to Jack, "Captain Jack, the air over there is highly poisonous. As long as it touches a little, it will be poisoned and fall to the ground." "What did you say?" Jack sucked in a breath and stepped to the position his subordinates said. Then the nostrils flared and he took a breath. Suddenly, an indescribable stench rushed towards his forehead, and Jack involuntarily stepped back half a step, barely not falling to the ground. And not only is it smelly, there is also a toxin in that gas that is obviously very unfriendly to living people. Even though he was already an animal powerhouse after the fruit ability awakened, there was a momentary disturbance in his breathing. If you stay in this air for a long time, even Jack will die soon. Quickly backing away from the area, Jack looked at the men who kept falling down with a dark face, thinking of a guy Zue told them to be careful. Not only did Jack remember it, but Doflamingo also discovered the source of this power. After all, the owner of that guy, who has had a lot of dealing with Guy, was able to successfully persuade Guy to take more shots this time, and he also took advantage of it. This power has been gradually revealed in front of the world in recent months. Kiba, the commander of the undead army under the Ice Dragon, Loya, the Plague Lord, K-Roctal. No one knows what Roha did to the former king, Shichibukai. When he reappeared in front of the world, K-Roctal lost the ability to be a natural rustling fruit. But at the same time, he possesses a brand new power, a plague power that targets the living. A few days ago, after listening to Zue tell him and others the information, Doflamingo also thought that he and K-Roctal had the power to fight, but now it seems that he is very correct to pull Jack together this time. They've already attacked, and it's too far to detour to another port. Come this way, I know a secret way to bypass the port. Dressrosa's situation is unclear at the moment, and Doflamingo is unwilling to delay. Jack looked at the plague area in front of him with some reluctance, and finally gave up the idea of rushing over. Doing that would be a huge loss. Except for his self-confidence, it is absolutely impossible for the rest of the people to rush out of the plague zone intact. Before coming here, Zue repeatedly warned him that the mission of this trip is to protect the Smile Factory, and if necessary, give up Doflamingo. He didn't want to anger Zue. After all, Zue had their boss standing behind him. There were many 4 Emperor guys. Doflamingo walked to the stone wall not far from the port, groped for a few times on the wall, and then pressed a switch, and a secret door appeared here rumblingly. This road leads directly to the Avenue of Lovers. I'll go back to the palace to take a look. Be careful, after all, your opponent is the Plague Lord. After that, Doflamingo ignored Jack and his group, and climbed up a sky on the thin line. The Plague Lord, which means that the other party may have plagues in the city. For this kind of untouchable thing, Jack's face was black and bright. He greeted his subordinates, and stepped into the secret passage. All the way forward, the tip of the nose is always filled with the pungent bloody smell. Even if he is at a high altitude, Doflamingo can clearly smell this smell. This is not because he has a keen sense of smell, but at this moment in the entire country of Dressrosa, this smell is too strong. A soldier under Don Quixote, a diehard loyalist of King Doflamingo, Crocdar killed as many as he could. Now that the battle is not over, he has no spare time to clean up the corpses, leaving Mukuro with corpses lying in every corner of the country. The beautiful spray Izumi on the street was still spraying as before, but now the dripping on the slate had changed from transparent water to the blood of Yuhi the gorilla. It is simply a picture of hell on earth. But even in this purgatory-like environment, the entire Dressrosa was full of people, as lively as a festival, and the scene was very strange. Standing on a thin line that was almost invisible to the naked eye, Doflamingo rolled his eyes and looked in the direction of the cheering crowd not far away. Following their line of sight, the familiar picture of the bullfighting arena appeared in his eyes. Then, crunch! One after another python-like blue veins appeared on his head, and Doflamingo exuded a strong murderous aura. You lied to me, Carp. Chapter 468 arrived, Cruelty of Doflamingo. The first one. Remember, right pointing arrow, in 1 second to provide you with wonderful novel reading. The Navy couldn't crusade Doflamingo, who was a dragon, and the identity of Shichibukai only added a little convenience to him. Because even if he bears the shameful name of the Betrayer clan, his brother Doflamingo is still a member of the Dragon Man. The dog also depends on the owner. The dragon people of the world's nobles are qualified to disapprove of him, but if you low-level pariahs dare to attack the dragon people, the nature will be completely different. But even if the king's power is added, the world still relies on fist words after all. At that time, the situation was so critical that it was impossible to say anything else. The anger made people lose their minds. So as early as a year ago, Doflamingo, who was seeking to protect himself, exchanged information and a large amount of interests that belonged to the Don Quixote family exclusively within the dragon people, in exchange for Carp's promise to stop. At the same time, in exchange, once Loya shoots at him, the Navy must make every effort to stop Loya's request. But back home, Doflamingo doesn't think the Navy will really become an enemy of Loya because of a promise that cannot see the light. But that's enough. It is not only in the Navy that Doflamingo can find his way of survival. With the 2 background cards of Dragon and JKER, he can make many choices. A year ago, when it was talked about that if Loya didn't take action, he was just secretly looking for trouble, Carp patted his chest and assured him. As long as you are still Chiwahai, then we will not allow him to mess around. Don't look at the Navy's position. It is this guarantee that allows Doflamingo to go out to sea to find Guy to bring more rescue troops. Because in his opinion, as long as he returns in time, Loya will not do anything to Dressrosa. Chiwahai, Longren, JKER, these triple identities are placed there, and anyone must weigh the weight before making a decision. Combined with the Navy's commitment, Doflamingo thought he had bought enough time. But what happened now? After all his family members passed away, the senior officials of the Don Quixote family who had been with him all the time were now tied to iron chains like animals, killing each other and letting everyone judge. Luo, yeah. The tyrannical aura suddenly spread out, and Brother Doflamingo roared like a wild beast. At this moment, he only had one thought in his mind, that is, to kill Loya, to kill this group of people who laughed and watched his family members fight. He wants to kill everyone and destroy this country. Conqueror's haki swept the audience mercilessly, and the square immediately became quiet. But this is not the end. Before the unconscious crowd fell to the ground, a thin thread descended, piercing through them, smashing their internal organs, and then nailing them firmly in place. Observation haki unfolded, and after Doflamingo made sure that there were no other living people, he headed towards the bullfighting arena. When Doflamingo unfolded his conqueror's haki, K. Rockdale raised his head and looked at the high wall of the arena. Not only him, but also Jack, who just got out of the secret passage. Although he couldn't recognize the direction, he just had to follow Doflamingo's breath. It was a mistake that the enemy did not spread the plague in the city. Jack held the shorter knife, chopped down the fleeing civilians along the way, and headed towards the bullfighting arena. Seeing Rockdale's abnormality, Drake lowered his eyelids, stretched out his hand and took out a weapon from his back. Are you here? Doflamingo. He's my prey, don't interfere. K. Rockdale, S face was full of fighting intent at this moment, and he slowly stood up. While the leaders of all parties were silently waiting for the battle, ordinary people like Gaz were unaware and continued their work. It's a wonderful battle. In the face of an attack, you can't dodge or evade, and tear open the opponent's stomach at the cost of breaking a hand. What a fierce battle. Only the undead can achieve this level of madness. No, Lord Derringer's feet were cut off by Lord Diamante. Has his battle ended? In the center of the platform, Dellinger raised his head and wanted to reach out and continue to attack Diamante, who had raised his sword. But his skills are all on his feet, and at the moment his feet are broken, his counterattack is meaningless. Poke. Even though the surroundings were extremely noisy, the sound of the sharp blade piercing the head was clearly poured into everyone's ears. Seeing Dellinger, who finally stopped moving, the people watching the live broadcast were boiling again. Go on. Keep fighting. Sir Diamante, come on. They don't care who is fighting now, all they care about is who will be the final winner of this crazy gladiatorial fight. The beast that Doflamingo released with his own hands is now showing his kiba in front of his family cadres. Just as the atmosphere intensified, a voice appeared above Gaz's head. Oh, is it so interesting, Gaz? There was an indescribable gloom in those words, but it gave people a sense of conflict that the volcano was about to erupt. Gollum. Gaz, who was unraveling, stopped all movements in an instant and froze in place. He wriggled his rusty neck hard and turned his head away with a crunch. Then he saw that Doflamingo's big gloomy face was already less than 10 centimeters away from him. A lot of flamenco. Ah, it's me. When approaching the edge of the explosion, Doflamingo calmed down instead, and he opened his big hand to Gaz while answering. The shadow cast by the pink feathers behind him bound the tiny Gaz to be in a narrow space. I didn't even add the king. Sure enough, you betrayed me. No 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 no. Laugh. Before Gaz was finished, he didn't use the fruit ability, relying entirely on his own brute force. The flamingo's fingers slammed into his stomach. He rested his head on Gaz's shoulder, and said kindly while digging in his warm stomach, it's okay, it's okay. As long as you die, I will forgive you. Under the severe pain, Gaz turned over by Akugan, saliva and snot dripping down continuously, and finally after finishing speaking, Flamingo touched a warm coconut that was constantly expanding and contracting. Rolling his eyes, Doflamingo smiled softly, goodbye, Gaz. Puff. Unable to conceal the abnormality at the banquet, seeing a corpse fell from there into the pool below, K. Rockdale tidied up his sleeves and grinned. It's finally here, Doflamingo. Chapter 469 Oniantu. Second more. Remember, right pointing arrow, in 1 second to provide you with wonderful novel reading. Ah, yeah. Blood dripped from Doflamingo's fingers, splattering ripples in the pool of blood on the ground. Looking at the cadres who were still fighting, Doflamingo closed his eyes in pain. It's just that all this is hidden behind the sunglasses, and no one finds his abnormality. Then, he turned his gaze to K. Rockdale, the cloak behind him fluttered high automatically without wind. That's his conqueror's hockey. This kind of power is not only used to clean up trash, mixing it into the attack will only make the attack stronger. Before he could make a move, Doflamingo was ready to go all out. My subordinates, thank you for taking care of me. The irony was so obvious, K. Rockdale didn't show weakness, and pushed back, oh, you. They're a little disobedient, so I'll discipline you for a while. At this point, K. Rockdale waved his hand as if embarrassed. Don't thank me, this is what I should do. Boom. Before the words were finished, a line of Jinchuriki columns suddenly hit the platform where K. Rockdale was, making a deafening sound. Under the billowing smoke, the huge wall that was incomparably thick in the eyes of ordinary people was actually torn apart. Give me enough time. Doflamingo roared angrily, turned his body, and threw the line Jinchuriki column from his palm, with a whimpering whistle, and threw it to the side violently. More than a whip. Faced with this swift and violent pursuit, K. Rockdale in midair had no good way to dodge, so he erected Sasori, poisonous sting and placed it between himself and the line Jinchuriki column. Ding! The line Jinchuriki column and Sasori's poisonous hook collided with each other, and a lot of sparks burst out in the air, showing how strong the two were fighting. Hit from the air, K-Roctal was fired like a cannonball, and stopped moving after penetrating 3 houses. And in the bullfighting arena in situ, at this moment, it was cut in the middle by Doflamingo, and the top half was floating in the air. Doflamingo did not pursue after watching Crocodile disappear into the night. He stared at the thin line on his hand, biting Kiba tightly. Helu Stone. Just in the attack just now, he clearly felt that there was no trace of domineering fluctuations in K-Roctal's body. And he shot with anger, this power exceeding the whip, it is easy to cut through the steel. But the fact is that the golden Sasori sting was unscathed in the attack, and he did not receive feedback from the line Jinchuriki column cutting the item. Then the answer is obvious, the other party's weapon that seems to be made of soft gold is actually made of Helu Stone inside. Helu Stone is not invincible, it also has its own endurance limit. But the ability of the capable person absolutely cannot destroy this thing. Whoa! Pushing away the stone that was pressing on him, K-Roctal calmly climbed up from the ruins. He knew that Doflamingo had discovered the problem, and he simply did not hold back. I know that the dead can't cultivate domineering, so what should I use to resist the powerful attack of the capable ones? Do you think we will be unprepared for such a conspicuous weakness that can no longer be conspicuous? After he finished speaking, regardless of Doflamingo's grievances, K-Roctal tore off his tattered suit, revealing a thin piece of Helu Stone that was clinging to his body. The combination of technology and magic is the most powerful force. Feel the power of this top creation from Turtle Island, the Helushi Level 5 body armor. Hum. Buzzing sounds came from K-Roctal's body, and suddenly, a large area of the sky was blocked by a group of unknown things. The bright moonlight shone down at the right time, revealing the K-Roctar hidden under the plague swarm. Disaster is coming. The two sides have not died endlessly, and they will die endlessly. Naturally, K-Rocta will not keep his hands, and once he makes a move, it is his most powerful range attack. The dense swarm of dark worms is like a dark cloud of life, circling the Doflamingo wrapped up. As long as it gets a little bit of these things, then the victory level will be completely tilted towards K-Roctal. The swarms with blood radiating from their eyes were obviously not easy to mess with, and Brother Doflamingo had no intention of trying it out. While stepping on the thin line created by the airway, he kept fleeing in midair, avoiding the pursuit of the insect swarm. A thin line flashed by the side, and the swarm was continuously shot down and divided. But no matter how he attacked, these bugs seemed to be endless, and they didn't see any reduction in the slightest. Soon, Doflamingo realized that he couldn't get a chance to get close. He frowned, and the powerful Conqueror's haki suddenly swept the audience. Boom! It is obviously invisible and domineering, but at this moment, even the space trembles. One after another, inexplicable purple-black thunders swept across the side, stunning most of Dressrosa's residents. Even the soldiers of the Undead Legion who lacked strength actually lost consciousness under this kind of attack. Conqueror's haki, itself a psychic attack. This group of corpse Mukuro, driven by the soul, is even less resistant to this kind of attack that directly reaches the soul level. If it weren't for Roha's powerful magical protection, it would not be impossible to be directly shattered on the spot. But, even though his Conqueror's haki is so powerful, it's still of little use against the Plague Swarm. The Plague Swarm is not a real living swarm, nor is it an undead creature driven by the soul. Their existence is only a virtual magic, like a weapon without consciousness. Just as Doflamingo was glad that he had found a weakness in the undead army, a pitch-black flying insect landed on his shoulders and took a bite. Damn! The feather cloak that Doflamingo was wearing covered his entire upper body. However, the bite force of these insects is exaggerated and amazing, directly penetrating the extremely tough cloak. It was just that, and he was about to be planted with that dreadful plague. Bounce the line. A thin line shot out, and the force stronger than a bullet directly smashed the lucky bug into pieces, and turned into a puff of black smoke in the night. But this is not the end. When the black smoke touched the flying insect swarm, it immediately turned into a bug again, and continued to join the team chasing Doflamingo. It looks like these bugs are keeping you busy. Rockdale smiled disdainfully. I knew you were so weak, I should have changed tasks with Ulysses. After finishing, K. Rockdale turned his head to look at the end of the street without going over the flamingo. Then what are you doing next? The Beast Pirates. Opposite him, Jack, Drought, one of Guy's three disasters, is looking at him with interest at the moment. Hearing the question, Jack laughed loudly. The name Rockdale sounds familiar to me, but you are the loser. As a cadre of Guy's many years ago, he certainly knew that there was a person with the ability to challenge Whitebeard many years ago. But then the loser rolled out of the new world in embarrassment and became a temporary joke. For this kind of stuff, the entire 100 Beast Pirates will not pay much attention to it. It wasn't until now that he was standing in front of K. Rockdale that he recognized him. Isn't Crocodile the loser? Loser. These three words brought back some bad memories of K. Rockdale. His eyes suddenly turned gloomy, and the plague spread out uncontrollably. Looks like I have to kill you before I can deal with the flamingo. Chapter 470 Team up against the enemy. For 3 more subscriptions, ask for tickets. Remember, right pointing arrow, in 1 second to provide you with wonderful novel reading. Hey, don't make extras. Doflamingo is not so easy to solve. Just as the two of them were about to start their hands, Drake walked over from the other side of the street with his 4-edged axe. If you can't complete Lord Roja's order, you and I can't go back to work. The sound was so abrupt, Jack and Rockdale turned their heads in surprise. After carefully identifying the appearance of the person coming, Jack suddenly laughed loudly. This is such a coincidence. Falling Rear Admiral, Drake. Oh, one of the 3 disasters of the 4 emperors, henchman, how could a big man like you know about me? Drake raised his eyebrows and stood between Jack and Rockdale. Of course. Guy, the boss, has long had an idea for you, a person with ancient abilities. Jack spewed 2 breaths from his nostrils, Jinchuriki column, and clenched the shotel knife in his hand. If I can bring you go give Guy the boss, he'll be very happy. There are many 4 emperor guys. As the strongest creature in this world, his preference for fauna is well known throughout the New World. Including the 3 major disasters under his command, all of them are strong in the ability of animal fruit. In Guy's view, when a person's body is strong, that is the real power. Compared with the soft power of the natural system and all kinds of weird things in the superhuman system, the ability to punch to the flesh of the animal system is more in line with his aesthetics. As a very precious rare species in the animal system, the ancient species Tyrannosaurus fruit ability, if Guy doesn't want to close him for a little more, Drake will find it strange. Just a pity. That's a pity, my current bosses, Ice Dragon, Loya. Derek looked at Jack strangely and let go of the axe in his hand. You take me back, are you sure Guy will be happy? If that's the case, then come on. You. Hearing this, Jack's face darkened, and he was holding on to Kiba and didn't dare to answer. Before the events in Alabasta, Jake had been there with Zubby. At that time, he could clearly see the tragic situation of many guys, and he also knew the power of Loya. It's not that he is afraid of Loya, but his master, Beast's Guy Duo, has been ordered to dormant since he was seriously injured a year ago, and even the provocations of ordinary supernovas don't care much. This is something that has never happened before. His wound has indeed healed, but Jack understands that the current Guy is not necessarily the opponent of the soaring Roja. Once he acts rashly at this moment and takes Drake back to Guy Duo, the other party is very likely to come at the door. At that time, after delaying Guy's plan, the first person to die is definitely him. Just stop the crap here, Drake. Crocodile stopped the two from continuing to talk, and while moving his muscles and bones, he exuded a strong plague toxin all over his body. These plagues are very terrifying, and even the grass in the cracks under the feet withered instantly under the power of this plague. The Sile Factory will be handed over to you, and I will do everything here. Sile Factory. Hearing this name, Jack was startled and asked fiercely, "What are you going to do to the factory?" For Jack's reaction, the two were a little confused at first. Knowing that's Flamingo's property, what does what they do have to do with Jack? But remembering what Loya once said, the two of them had a clear understanding, and laughed secretly. "Oh, no wonder you're here," Drake said in a strange tone, and then, without saying a word, he twisted his axe and ran away. Looking in that direction, it is the location of the toy house. Why are many of Guy's subordinates appearing here? Seeing Jack's reaction, the two immediately figured out the reason. Guy is mostly a fan of animal fruit abilities, so of course he wants to collect various animal fruit. And the artificial devil fruits made in the Sile Factory are all animal-based. Jack and Doflamingo's team is not so easy to deal with. Drake makes a quick decision and rushes to the toy factory to get the task done before Jack. "You bastard, stop for Lao Su." Moo. With an angry shout, Jack's body rapidly expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. When he completed his transformation, a huge mammoth with a height of 7 or 8 meters had already appeared on the spot. Boom. As soon as he stepped down, the hard bluestone pavement was easily smashed like a crisp biscuit. Aiming at Drake, Jack howled and launched a charge. Drought is because the place he steps on will dry up and decay like a drought, and eventually perish. Nothing can stop his charge, and everything collapses and destroys under that huge soul. It's dangerous. You still haven't done it. Drake didn't have the strength to go head-to-head with the cadres of the 4 emperors now. He felt the majestic aura coming from behind him, and he quickened his pace without looking back. But he didn't need to worry too much, because K. Rockdale was still there, and naturally he wouldn't watch him get trampled to death by Jack. Plague Thorn. Sure enough, just as Jack was about to catch up with Drake, a sharp green thorn with Madara and black light suddenly rose from the ground. And unlike the one he used in the previous fight with Anilu, the size of this plague thorn is huge enough to penetrate the body of a sea king. From a distance, it looks like a tall tower, slantingly inserted into the ground. And the position where the top of the minaret is aligned happens to be Jack's deformed belly. Damn. Knowing that the plague of Rockdale was not easy to deal with, Jack certainly did not dare to use his belly to test the power of this thorn. During the charge, he quickly cancelled the deformation, and his body quickly shrank accordingly. Almost clinging to the thorn of the plague, Jack narrowly avoided the attack. The inertia of the forward thrust caused Jack to fall heavily to the ground, knocking down several houses during the roll, and then stopped rolling. Not waiting for the gravel to fall, Jack stood up suddenly, slapped the falling stone off his head, and then looked at Rockdale fiercely. "You guy, do you want to die?" "I'm sorry, I'm already a dead person." Rockdale looked at him with a smile and spread his hands. "How about you try to kill me again? Plus how about me?" Suddenly, a line of Jinchuriki column descended, knocking Crocodile into the air in an instant. Looking at the sparks flashing in the air, Doflamingo turned cold and said to Jack behind him, "This guy is not something you can deal with alone. He is full of Halu stones. Think of Zuwei's order, let's kill him together." "Ah, I think so too." Even if Doflamingo didn't, Jack was ready to do it. The terrifying plague, the Halushi body armor that restrains himself, once he is approached by K. Rockdale, his end will definitely not be very good. So he needs Doflamingo's line and fruit ability, and the speed and concealment of the thin line can well contain K. Rockdale. The funny thing is that the muscle that used to be the proudest has now become Jack's most fatal weakness. The battle between the living and the dead is not just about the comprehensive strength of both sides. Chapter 471 Individual Battles. Che, are you still working together? Turning over and standing up from the rubble, K. Rockdale looked up at the sky. This guess appeared in his mind when he saw Jack, but the idea that Jack, the drought under Guy duo, would agree to join forces with others was indeed too ridiculous. But it's ridiculous, the combination of the two is now a fact, and the next thing he has to do is to think about how to defeat the combination of the two. Thinking of this, K. Rockdale is a little strange. How did Doflamingo get rid of the entanglement? He can feel that his plague swarm has not been eliminated, but now he does not know why he has lost contact and cannot control it. As his gaze turned, K. Rockdale found a white worm cocoon hanging on the top of a building. The last feedback before the swarm disappeared was at the place where the worm cocoon was. Taking a closer look, K. Rockdale was surprised to find that the cocoon was entangled by countless thin threads. It's just that the source of these thin lines is very special. At the end of the building, you can vaguely see the stones that are still deforming into thin lines. Yes, those hard stones are constantly transforming into thin threads, wrapped around the cocoon. Awakening ability of the thread fruit. Rockdale now knew how Doflamingo got rid of the swarm, and he sighed. I was still far behind before, and the rustling fruit fell into my hands. What a waste. Call out. At this moment, a thin line broke through the smoke and shot straight at his head. Puff. Allowing the thin thread wrapped around armament hockey to run through his head, K. Rockdale smashed the end of the thin thread with his backhand, and then calmly pulled it out of his head little by little. Dead people have no Achilles heel, flamingos. In front of his eyes, Doflamingo and Jack, the mammoth turned into a mammoth, are at the ready, always wrapped in armament hockey, to resist the plague that is always spreading in Krokdar. Such a powerful enemy is still undead. Ice Dragon, Loya's current strength can be seen in Madara. It's useless to punch through, then I'll crush you. The giant elephant Jack was talking, and suddenly burst out at a speed that did not match his huge body, and instantly appeared on the top of K. Rockdale's head, roared, and the huge elephant's feet stomped on K. Rockdale. Rumbling. The earth rolled like cotton, and the fierce wind blew out, rolling up thick smoke. Suffering such a strong impact, the entire Dressrosa trembled. Just when Jack thought he had succeeded in his attack, suddenly his body softened and he trembled with some difficulty. Not good. Hey Lucy. Doflamingo was startled, and the ground under his feet suddenly turned into white lines. Then, regardless of whether it would accidentally hurt Jack, a huge white wave rushed out, aiming at Jack's position and slamming down. Big wave white line. His idea was correct, and sure enough, he heard Krokdar snort in disgust from the ashes, and then Jack fell to the ground, and was smashed into the ground by the huge white line that was like an ocean wave. At the same time, a figure rushed out of the smoke and spread out its fingers, aiming at Doflamingo. Plague strike. In an instant, the overwhelming terrifying plague shot out like a ray of light Jinchuriki column. Even before he got close, Doflamingo felt a wave of fatigue and burning heat. If you let the attack hit, you will definitely die. Doflamingo raised his hand decisively, and several huge lines appeared on the ground, forming a pot lid over his head. Shield white line. The terrifying plague can't help the hard tortoise shell. Facing this purely physical defense, there is no good way for K. Rockdale. Letting the plague stay around Doflamingo's tortoise shell, Rockdale turned and rushed to where Jack was. The reason why he didn't dodge the attack that was enough to crush him before was to push the large amount of plague stored in the Sasori sting into Jack's body to facilitate the next attack. How tenacious the animal fruit ability person is after awakening, K. Rockdale is very clear about this. If you can't kill with one hit, then the battle will definitely become very difficult. Moo. Just as he was moving fast, an elephant trunk suddenly tore the white line and smashed it from the bottom up. A creature like an elephant, in addition to its size, is the most difficult trunk to deal with. The attack came very fast, and K. Rockdale knew that the opportunity had been lost, so he decisively gave up the attack and stepped back to avoid the elephant's trunk's slap. Crawling out of the ground, Jack gasped heavily, staring at Rockdale's movements, guarding against his every move. When he attacked before, the leg that was hooked by Sasori's poisonous sting had turned blue and black. Although it would not affect the overall situation, it would be impossible to keep this leg if he continued to fight. Suddenly, Jack's eyes moved, and he charged at K. Rockdale. Catch him, Joker. Not good. Rockdale was startled, and almost subconsciously jumped to the side. However, the elongated white thread followed closely and tied his ankle. The movement was restrained, and Jack roared, endured the pain and slammed into the Rockdale. Boom! On the other side, Drake led the remaining soldiers forward at a high speed, rushing straight to the toy house. Señor Piccolo is the only remaining Don Quixote cadre in Dressrosa, and has been tasked only with protecting the toy house. The intruder they discovered before suddenly disappeared after a series of intensive firepower, which made Peak suddenly have an ominous premonition in his heart. He activated his water fruit ability and dived to the ground, only then did he discover the tunnel opened by the Dong Ta Ta clan underground. However, the breath was held for too long, and the end of the passage was not found, and Peak had to return to the ground to breathe. As soon as he looked up, he heard the sound of a fiery battle outside. Is there another enemy coming? This time you are absolutely not allowed to pass. On one side were Don Quixote's soldiers who had superior firepower and terrain, and the other side was the undead army who could not be beaten or be afraid of death. Even though they have tried their best to speed up the reloading speed, under the leadership of Drake, the undead army is still firmly approaching their defense line step by step. Once the two sides are in contact, then these undead who had high bounty in their lifetime will let this group of happy enemies know what real fear is. Soon, the soldiers on the first step had already advanced to the edge of the defense line. A silver arc flashed past, and the cannon, which had become hot due to firing, directly misfired and broke into two pieces. It's there, rush with me. Seeing the line of defense being torn apart, Drake transformed into a Tyrannosaurus now, using his huge size to open the way for the soldiers behind him. As long as there is a hole in the defense line, the opponent's firepower will drop by more than one grade. Now he doesn't have to worry about being caught by the opponent and used as a living target. The icy sword was stained with warm blood, and the undead army earnestly carried out the master's order and carried out the slaughter in an orderly manner. But just then, Peak arrived. At a glance, he noticed Drake, who was constantly rushing in the crowd, and Butterfly stroked over to grab Drake's toes. Toes and shoulders fall. Don't underestimate a toe. Even a big cat with 4 legs will have to fall when a toe is fixed in the forward thrust. After Drake transformed, he relied on his 2 feet to support his body. At this moment, he suddenly couldn't lift his left foot, and there was still a force to move him forward. He immediately slammed his chin on the floor. Bastard! Who did it? Drake suddenly roared, and the vertical pupils of a pair of cold-blooded animals radiated fierce light, looking for their prey everywhere. I won't let you pass, trespasser. Peak slowly climbed up from the ground, biting his pacifier and looking down at Drake, who was lying on the ground. Looking at Peak, the fat man's baby clothes, at this moment, Drake has an inexplicable feeling in his heart. This time, it should be a genuine pervert. Chapter 472 Navy. I'm going to attack next. Completely unaware of what Drake was thinking at the moment, he stepped back a few steps, and Peak sneaked into the ground and launched an attack on Drake. The hard ground melted away like water, completely wrapping Peak in the ground. Then Peak swam quickly and bumped into Drake. The size gap is there, and Peak knows that it is difficult for his joint skills to play the due effect. However, relying on the fruit ability, he is still confident to defeat the fierce beast in front of him. Cat ear punch. Hilariously, he put his hands on both sides of the top of his head. Peak looked in the direction, and suddenly ejected from the ground. Seeing that pervert in this baby outfit was still using this kind of funny pervert attack, the corners of Drake's mouth twitched, he shook his big head without dodging, and pushed it hard. Get away from me, pervert. It's contagious. Boom. The cat's ear punch didn't have the desired effect at all, and Drake's strength was far beyond Peak's imagination. They collided with each other, giving him the illusion that his wrists were about to be broken. The opponent is too rough and meaty. Peak thought so, followed the impact, and sank directly into the wall. As a water fruit person, the second stage damage after being attacked does not exist for him at all. When the wall and the ground touch him, it will turn into a liquid-like existence and gently wrap him in it. What a bizarre ability. Derek got up from the ground angrily and looked around at the surroundings. Observation hockey is difficult to perceive between the solid ground and the wall, which is also an advantage of Peek. As long as he does not attack, there is almost no way for opponents to find him. But the fruit of water can only let him submerge the walls and the ground like water. As a normal person, it is impossible for him to stay underwater for too long when he needs to breathe. Soon, Peek's second attack had to be brewed. In a hidden corner, a circle of ripples quietly appeared on the wall, as if something was about to burst out. Call out. The next moment, Peek, who was swimming at high speed, got out of the wall and attacked Drake again. However, with the previous lessons, he obviously won't hit the opponent's head this time, but aimed at the common weakness of creatures, the position of the underbelly. The superb swimming skills made Peek like a big fish and quickly approached Drake. Just when he thought that his attack was bound to hit, a sneer appeared on the corner of Drake's mouth, and the deformation was lifted within the slightest of being attacked. Peek was targeting Drake's flank, one of the softest areas of any creature. But as Drake released his transformation, his direction of travel became the opponent's shoulder. And there, Drake, who was already prepared, had already set up his weapon and pointed the sharp blade at Peek, who had nowhere to help in the air. Wait. Puff. Ignoring Peek's panic, Drake staggered the four-edged axe and the western sword, flashed quickly, and brought the weapon closer to Peek. X-Dragon Kiba Smash. When Drake regained his stability, others had already appeared 10 meters away, leaving only a bright, X-shaped light and shadow, and the huge gap in Peek's abdomen and chest with deep visible bones. With a sigh of relief, Drake put away his weapons and turned to look at Peek, who fell unconscious on the ground. Cut. As expected, you are still not at home, and you didn't even break into 4 pieces. But it doesn't matter, at this rate of bleeding, you will only be alive in a few minutes. The main general was defeated, and the remaining soldiers naturally had no reason to persevere. The tree fell and scattered, throwing down the weapon and hurriedly running away. It was a waste of time to chase these soldiers. Drake ignored them and told his subordinates to move on. Suddenly, a strong sense of crisis rushed to his forehead. With his feet shoved, Drake slammed back, and an iron lock came across the river. Almost as soon as he raised his head and fell down, an invisible Chi Jinchuriki column spurted past the position of his head. Several legionnaires behind him were caught off guard by the Jinchuriki column, and rolled into a ball in a series. Then, a faint voice sounded, and Drake also discovered the breath of the enemy. You can beat Peek, you look pretty good. But that's the end of it. Under the faint moonlight, the high-raised cloak behind the other party was so familiar that Drake's eyes widened and he said in disbelief, Navy. In the ruins, Doflamingo kept inserting thin threads with a thickness of less than 1 millimeter into his body, stitching up the wounds he suffered from the battle. Not far from him, K. Rockdale was lying on his back, being pressed to the ground by Jack, unable to move. Drought. Jack was also severely injured at the moment, and every slight activity was accompanied by unbearable pain for ordinary people. But they all know that someone must control K. Rockdale at this moment, otherwise the two will not have time to relieve their breath and recover from their previous injuries. Jack's hands were wrapped in thick white thread, which Doflamingo had intentionally wrapped around him in order to touch Rockdale. Really can't touch this undead bastard. This is Jack's lesson in exchange for half the palm and half the shoulder. In addition to the Heilushi body armor, the plague toxin on the opponent's body is also very terrifying, but just because he was impatient, he didn't cover armament hockey and punched K. Rockdale, and then his fist touched the opponent's skin, which was visible to the naked eye. The speed quickly festered. You must know that Jack is an awakened animal fruit person. Even if his defense power is not as much as Guy's, he can directly ignore general attacks and poisons. However, that's it. In less than a second of short contact, his palm was eroded by the plague and festered. Looks like your Heilushi body armor has saved you once more, Rockdale. As Doflamingo said, just now his unique trick, 1,000 arrows piercing the heart feather strike line, attacked K. Rockthal, who was restrained by Jack, from all directions, but was blocked by the Halushi body armor on the opponent's body. Blocks most attacks. Even if the remaining silk thread runs through his body, it has little effect on K. Rockthal, who is already dead. But it doesn't matter, the battle is still won by them. Next, just go get something to tie him up, and then Doflamingo is ready to say hello to the culprit who lost his family. Don't talk nonsense, Joker. There are still enemies at the factory that have not been resolved, you shouldn't forget our deal. Jack bit Kiba and pressed it on Rockdale's back, raised his head and said to Doflamingo. Oh yes, and the Smile Factory. Doflamingo had an obvious smile on his face, and he didn't seem to be in a hurry at all. Don't worry about this, I have already asked my subordinates to deal with Drake over there, you. Before he finished speaking, K. Rockthal, who was suppressed by Jack, suddenly couldn't help laughing. The two turned their heads, not knowing what he was laughing at. Suddenly, Doflamingo had a bad premonition and asked sharply, do you have other people here? What? Jack was also taken aback by this guess. Is there still an enemy here? If the next one is the existence of the level of K. Rockthal, then it is very likely that the Smile Factory will not be able to keep it. Don't worry, there's no one else here except us. For some reason, K. Rockthal instead opened his mouth to comfort the two of them. The reason I'm laughing is because you got the point wrong. Among those guys, Drake is protected. The stuff. Protected stuff. The two suddenly lost their heads, but although they were puzzled, they also understood that the remaining combat power of the other party was probably not that weak. Immediately, Doflamingo stood up and said to Jack, I'll go and see first, I can't let the factory go wrong. In fact, only Jack's strength can suppress K. Rockthal, and he nodded immediately, not bothering much about this aspect. However, K. Rockthal still smiled happily, even though his head had been crushed and deformed, the clear ridicule was still clearly visible. Looking at Doflamingo, who was about to leave in the empty lane, K. Rockthal suddenly asked a question. This is going to leave. Do you think you have already won? Nani? Realizing that something was wrong, Jack, who was about to escape from the spot, suddenly knelt directly on the ground, as did Brother Doflaming. His face turned blue and Yuhi fell to the ground. Slowly standing up, K. Rockthal moved his limbs and grinned. I am the Plague Lord, under Lord Loya. I really don't know what it means for you to focus on my corpse that stores the plague. Chapter 473 Unexpected Explosion. Plague, as its name suggests, is a disease. But all diseases require a certain period of time. Especially for the powerhouses in the Hiroshi Sea in the One Piece world, this attack time will sometimes be excruciatingly slow. Jack's strong physique, Doflamingo's tenacious threads, and the combination of strength and smartness from both sides joined forces to resist, but to delay his own defeat. So from the very beginning, there was no idea of K. Rockthal beating the two head-on. They had been fighting before, but the area had already been swarmed with plague germs by Crocodar. As the battle continued, every time they breathed, they were actually actively sucking a large amount of plague into their bodies. It's just that in order not to be discovered, K. Rockthal has always chosen to endure, be beaten passively, and fight back hard, until his plague has been enough to corrupt Jack, a monster whose physique is strong enough to pervert. Is it safe without skin contact? No, the power of the plague spread by contact is the most stupid. He is not the negative teaching material in Loya's story, the current director of the promotion city, Poison Man, Magellan. Although his body was extremely poisonous, he had to rely on his attack to get close to his target in order to be attacked by others. Since there is such a thing as poisonous gas, why is the development direction not placed on this? Maybe this is the difference between the living and the dead. As the undead, or the source of the plague, the development direction of K. Rockthal is completely on the route of how to completely kill the living beings. And to spread a plague of sufficient intensity without the enemy noticing it is the result of his cultivation in the past year. Lying on the ground, I feel that every part of my body is protesting. This kind of pain is not something ordinary people can bear. But neither of them screamed, biting Kiba and looking at Rockdale angrily. This level of plague, when? Just when we first met. Rockdale took out a brand new cigar from his arms, lit it silently and bit it in his mouth. Under his feet, the withered grass was blown by the wind and gradually turned into ashes. Don't you think that the power of the plague must be accompanied by stench and corrosion? If so, then I'm really embarrassed. Ignorance and ignorance are your greatest weaknesses. Rockdale smiled evilly, opened his right hand, and then clenched it suddenly. Plague thorn. Puff puff. Laugh. Sharp plague spikes protruded from the evil Madara on the two of them, at the hole left by the spikes. What came out was not hot blood, but a black viscous liquid full of pungent stench. Ah! After being hit hard by this, Jack and Doflamingo couldn't hold back any longer, and exclaimed hoarsely with a sore throat. At the same time, in front of the gate of the toy house leading to the underground court. Why is there a navy here? Drake looked at Virgo in disbelief. Even if there was a cold stake on his face, he couldn't deny the fact that he was a navy. And judging from the cloak behind the opponent, this person is still a vice admiral. A lieutenant-level pervert, no, navy. To appear in this place at this time. Why? Drake was full of doubts and didn't know what to say. But he doesn't do it, it doesn't mean the other party won't. Degenerate navy, Drake, I am now declaring you a death sentence in the name of the base commander of the G5 branch of the Navy. Suddenly, Virgo raised his finger, and an invisible Chi-Jinchuriki column shot out. Finger guns and bullets. The name of the move is easy to understand, but the actual power is not as explosive as the name. Just look at the string of undead behind Drake who were knocked into the air one after another to know how terrifying power this move has. Suddenly, two undead with swords rushed up and blocked in front of Drake. For this kind of behavior, in addition to sighing at the courage of the other party, Virgo disdained the other party's judgment. Your boss is so unbearable, just rely on you group of trash, are you still trying to block my attack? It really stopped. Virgo's eyes bulged suddenly, watching this amazing scene in disbelief. It was even said that the two did not shoot together, but one of the guys dressed as a swordsman moved the scabbard, and with a ding, Virgo's finger gun projectile, which was powerful enough to penetrate the steel, was easily bounced away and fell diagonally. On the wall not far away. Boom! Large pieces of gravel fell to the ground, and the dust flew up, shrouding a group of people inside. Virgo looked like a ghost, looking at them at a loss when their subordinates were stronger than the boss. How did this group form? By love. If Virgo knew that there was another you he knows named Bucky in the future, as he speculated, he generated electricity from love, and he became Kibukai with the support of his younger brother, I am afraid he would suffer from depression. Boss Drake, we know this guy, said the undead who did it. His identity is the base chief of the Navy's G5 branch, but secretly he is a cadre of the Don Quixote family and one of the top cadres. Quote. Since he was going to fight Shangmen, of course, Loya would not neglect the information, and told K-Roctal one by one before the army set off. Except for Jack from the Beast Pirates, this information ensures that the undead army will not be surprised to meet anyone in Dressrosa. I know a lot, so I can't keep you guys. Virgo sneered and pulled out his Yuchi. Then armed color, hardened. So what if he could block his own attack? This group of people didn't have any domineering fluctuations at all, and they didn't see the devil fruit, so I was afraid that they wouldn't succeed. Clang. Boom. For a time, the undead soldiers fought with Virgo, and bright sparks continued to sputter in the darkness, making the air crackle. Virgo's armament hockey is extremely strong, and even if the undead have exerted 100% of their body strength, there is absolutely no good way to face the hardened bamboo. On the contrary, the steel blade in their hands became damaged in the first step in the constant battle. Keep fighting and they will definitely win because they are tireless and don't lose strength over time. But now the battle is at a stalemate, and Virgo is guarding the gate firmly, not letting them step in the slightest. Time is very precious. Drake didn't want to make a bet on whether Jack would abandon K. Rockdale and chase after him desperately. Immediately he put aside Yuchi, transformed into a tyrannosaur and rushed up. It looks like you're in a hurry. Is it because there are soldiers behind you? Drake's abnormality could not be concealed from Virgo's sleazy eyes. While swinging Drake's head with a bamboo, he attacked his mentality with words. You also don't have confidence in K. Rockdale, right? After all, the opponents are the young master and the drought, Jack of the Beast Pirates. If you hold back you will win, so don't be delusional. As he spoke, Virgo turned around and slammed a stick on Drake's head, knocking him out. Boom. Boom boom boom. The ground was trembling, and for a while, the falling rocks rolled and smashed into the crowd. Virgo was a little puzzled, not even knowing that the stake on his face had fallen off. He looked at his hands suspiciously, thinking about why his strike was so powerful. However, he soon realized that the shock this time was not caused by himself, because the eyes of the guys on the opposite side were all placed behind him. Is it? Turning around with a whimper, Virgo slowly opened his mouth and looked at the smoke-filled toy house in shock. There, the flames rose into the sky, and the thick smoke and fire enveloped everything, and burned roaringly, consuming everything around them. And that direction is exactly where the SMLE factory is located. Chapter 474 Antonio Sheila. Factory. The factory was blow up. When a group of people stared blankly at the fire, they didn't understand what happened. Suddenly behind Drake, the sound of the manhole cover being flipped suddenly sounded in the opposite street. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, and saw that the group of soldiers who had been separated from themselves and others for a long time were crawling out one by one. Not only them, but also some little guys hanging from their clothes. Jong Kiba danced his claws to celebrate the victory. Victory. Companion was rescued. The princess's strange illness is also cured. The factory also blew up. The little warriors of the Dongtita tribe brandished their unique weapons and laughed with a group of soldiers. If I'm not mistaken, those are the little people. Drake thought so. At this moment, the soldiers of the other side also found their companions across the street, raised their hands and cheered, "Hey, Boss Drake. We have completed the mission." Suddenly they found Virgo and continued to wave, "That cadre of Don Quixote's house over there. Thank you for helping us arrange tasks." Drake was stunned for a moment, then turned his head to look at Virgo with a strange expression, and there was an indescribable strangeness in his tone. "I really have to thank you for my subordinates, Lieutenant General Virgo." At this moment, Virgo was speechless. He just sent one team of the quarrelsome soldiers to maintain order in the factory, and the other team sent out to patrol. Why is it so coincidental? Those guys he sent to patrol are the real Don Quixote family soldiers. The strong explosion could be heard by the entire Dressrosa, and the fire that shot into the sky after that illuminated the night. For Jack and Doflamingo, they were very worried at the moment that Drake would succeed. But that's the way it is, the more worried you are, the more likely it will happen. Looking at the flames in the sky, Jack said in a nonchalant tone, "Hey Joker. Shouldn't it be?" At this moment, Doflamingo also had a look of decay, biting Kiba bitterly. The location of the Smile Factory. Then, despite the pain, he turned his head and glared at K. Rockdale, who was admiring the fire. "You bastard, what did you do?" "What did I do? Krokdar just found it funny. This mission was originally Drake's job, and he did nothing except let the undead army be dispatched by the other party. It's just that considering the importance of the Smile Factory, the speed of Drake's trip is really astonishingly fast." Joker. Quote. Jack suddenly roared wildly, "Do you know what Guy would do without the artificial devil fruit? How to do it? Probably will kill us both to vent his anger, with Guy's temper. But things haven't turned around yet." Doflamingo laughed, "And I don't know if it's talking to Jack or Rock." Doll said, "Don't worry, this is just a breeding base. As long as there is, I will continue to make devil fruits." "Oh, You're thinking of that guy, right? Before Jack could come back to his senses, Rockdale interrupted Doflamingo casually. There are 2 commanders of the undead army. Since I am here, where do you think there is another one? What? He instilled a plague on the restless Jack. Rockdale sat on his back and looked at Doflamingo condescendingly. This is the power that Lord Loya has. He has already made up everything. No matter what you do. No matter how hard you struggle, you can't escape defeat. Even if Guy comes here now, Lord Loya is ready to deal with him later. Creak. Hearing these words, Doflamingo bit Kiba, and the hatred in his eyes grew stronger. First, the Navy's breach of promise, and then the damage to his subordinates, has already caused the volcano of hatred in Doflamingo's heart to erupt completely. However, now he finally flipped the table's whole card, but was told by the other party that it had already been counted. Where did the other great commander of the Undead Legion go? Isn't the problem obvious? Punk Hassad is a place of extinction, but for them who are undead, that is the paradise they should exist. Despair. Doflamingo finally felt complete despair. This is something he has never felt since the day he was almost burned to death as a child. Ice Dragon. Loya is far more terrifying and crazier than any opponent he has ever come into contact with. After despair comes anger. He is angry at the collapse of his family, at his own weakness, and at the blindness of the Tianlong people. He is full of hatred for the whole world. Even if he was defeated and entered the advancing city in the original book, Doflamingo did not behave so rudely. Because this time, he really can't see any hope. Do not. No, there is still hope. Suddenly, Doflamingo forced himself to calm down. There is another opportunity. The masters of CP0 have come to Dressrosa, and now only they can save themselves. Judging from Loya's behavior during this period, he will surely start a war that sweeps the world, but before that, he will not be an enemy of the world government. Because that means he will fight against his navy, which is full of memories, and it means that the whole world will break free and develop towards a more chaotic situation. Although it is an army of the dead, Loya has an inexplicable respect for life. This can be seen from what the Undead Legion did in Moku Town. He would slaughter an entire town in order to eliminate the pirates, but for the sake of those civilians, he was willing to spend time cleaning up corpses to prevent the spread of the plague. Doflamingo believes that as long as the people of the world government come forward, Krokdar will agree to stop. As if responding to Doflamingo's call, 4 figures of different heights suddenly appeared in the open space not far from the 3 of them. They were all wearing thick protective suits and gas masks on their faces, and it seemed that they were not watching the battle for a while. The 4 of them walked peacefully in the ruins, exuding an air of extreme disregard for life, extremely dangerous, which also proved their identity as CP0s from the side. Quick, stop them! Doflamingo shouted anxiously, hoping that the other party would quickly move out of the pressure on the Tianlong people and let Loya stop. In response to his shout, the leader of the 4 nodded slightly, then raised a hand to show that he had no ill will, and walked slowly towards Krokdal. It's not that he is so arrogant that he only wants to use one hand to express his attitude, but because he only has one hand, and under the slender sleeve, the white cloth is empty and swaying constantly as he walks. Rockdale didn't stop them, letting them approach. If you really want to fight, these heavy-looking protective clothing can't resist their attack at this level. Soon, the 4 of them came to Krokdal, and the man in the lead bowed slightly, noble and polite. First meeting, please allow me to introduce myself. What? I heard the first half. Zero is an absolutely secret espionage agency. When can you report your family to the outside world? And since they are the authority of the organization directly under the Tianlong people, when do they need to report their family to the outside world? Then, the man's next words were even more shocking, and even Jack couldn't help but stop breathing. Because what he said was, under Antonio Silla, if nothing else, the next patriarch of the Antonio family, and perhaps the next leader of the world government. Antonio. The first Tianlong family at that time. And what? The next leader of the world government. Chapter 475 Inches Drought, Jack, Die. Antonio family. The next leader of the world government. The amount of information here is really too huge, and it directly shocked the three people present. Rockdale chewed on the information in the other party's words, frowning in thought. By the way, the supreme power of the world government is that the master is in the hands of the 5 old stars, right? Why did the Antonio family say he is the next leader of the world government? And the attitude of the other party does not seem to be the scene that Doflamingo expected. On the contrary, they have a very low attitude towards themselves. Hey, what are you talking about? Don't forget our deal. The ominous premonition in Doflamingo's heart became more and more obvious, and he shouted loudly. However, Scylla and the others turned a blind eye to him, focusing only on K. Rockdale. In this regard, K. Rockdale quickly calmed down and asked playfully, aside from what you said just now, I don't know what Mr. Shinluo, who is a Tianlong person, has anything to do with me. Please rest assured, I am not here to be your enemy. Shinluo smiled and said a sentence that made Doflamingo feel cold. My father ordered to bring a message to the Ice Dragon, Loya, but for some special reasons, as a member of CP0, we can't directly land on the Turtle Island visit. Quote. In Doflamingo's utterly desperate eyes, Shinluo took out a gold-trimmed invitation from his arms and handed it to Rockdale. I'm sorry that I can't tell you the specific process, so I have to trouble you to bring this invitation letter to Mr. Loya. The rest is up to Mr. Loya to decide. An invitation letter. K. Rockdale took it with his hand, glanced at it, made sure there was no danger, and put it in his arms. Then he nodded and said, I'm really getting more and more curious. I believe that you should be able to guess a little bit about Lord Loya's plan. Now show affection to him. Do you think he will give up? Who knows? Sheila shook his head, not wanting to dwell on this topic. Then, he turned his head to look at Jack and Doflamingo, and said suddenly, by the way, about this matter, I think it's better not to reveal a little bit of limelight. Do not leak. Hearing this sentence, K. Rockdale waved his hand with an inexplicable smile on his face. I won't bother you with this, I will handle it steadily. I just don't know about your companions. They are family dead servants, please rest assured on this point. After all, Scylla's gaze stayed on Doflamingo for a moment, then turned and left without looking back. Brother Doflamingo has completely lost his language ability at this moment. He never imagined that the reinforcements he had exchanged with the background of Tianlong would be such a situation. Scylla also said just now that because of some special reasons, they could not directly land on Turtle Island, so how should they avoid those special reasons, and send the invitation letter to Loya? Thinking of this, Doflamingo still doesn't understand. These reinforcements, whom he believed could save his life, were only to connect with K. Rockdale, so he agreed to his request. In fact, from the very beginning, their purpose was to avoid those special reasons, and successfully send the invitation to Loya. And he completely treated as an outcast. The most stupid thing is that before the truth was revealed, he naively thought that the other party would really help him, and stupidly hid the news all the way, and took them from the Holy Land, Mary Joa as quickly as possible. At this moment, he couldn't get angry anymore, because he found that he was the stupidest idiot in the world. Whether it is Tianlongren, Chihuahai or Joker, no matter what secrets he knows, it turns out that in the eyes of some people, these are really useless. K. Rockdale, you dare to kill me. At this moment, Jack's voice pulled Doflamingo's thoughts back. He turned his head and saw that K. Rockdale was stepping on Jack's huge body with one foot, and the Sasori sting in his hand was firmly inserted into Jack's chest. Although it feels very uncomfortable to be used by others, but there are so many beasts and guys, do you think we will really be afraid? Rockdale spoke lightly. Sasori's poisonous sting finally broke through Jack's defense, and the stored plague suddenly sunk into Jack's body like a rushing river. With the injection of the plague, his sturdy muscles soon lost their luster, the skin was loose and wrinkled together, and the whole person wilted at a speed visible to the naked eye. Not knowing what kind of pain he was going through, Jack's eyes were full of bloodshot eyes. He stared up at the sky, opened his mouth unconsciously, and the syllable, "ha ha," kept coming out of his throat. And then, boom! The muscled body suddenly lost its strength, and fell heavily to the ground, splashing a circle of smoke. Until this moment, the 4 emperors, 100 beasts, Guy, one of the 3 great disasters, Jack, drought, a well-known powerhouse in the world, has completely declared his downfall. After confirming that Jack was really dead, Rockdale sighed in relief and stood up straight. The awakeners of the zoology department are all perverts. These plagues are enough to contaminate a sea area, and they can barely kill them. Afterwards, K. Rockdale put his eyes on Doflamingo, and a playful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Next, what should I do with you? Doflamingo's pupils shrank, and he had vaguely seen his end. New World, in the sea area controlled by the beast pirates. In a cave on an isolated island, Guy woke up suddenly, with cold sweat on his forehead. He shook the wine gourd beside him, and after hearing the sound of water inside, he lifted it up and poured it in big gulps. The cool wine slid down his throat, and the air was suddenly confused by the rich aroma of wine. Hearing the movement, in the cave, another figure slowly stood up and walked to Guy Duo's side. What? Another nightmare? Ah, yes, a terrible nightmare. Guy put down the gourd and said quietly. But he didn't want to talk more about these things. That person was also used to this matter, and he didn't ask any further questions, and both sides were silent for a while. How is SPX-10 development going? After a moment, Guy broke the silence. It's 70% completed, but it will take at least a few years to become a complete master. Wearing blue pajamas, Zhu Wei yawned greatly. But even if it's done, it's a cure for the symptoms, not the root cause. You have to rely on your own strength to completely conquer this thing. The cold cane appeared in Zhu Wei's hand. He raised his hand and moved the cane. The end of it rested on Guy's chest. Guy understands a lot of these things, otherwise there would be no incubation period of this year. But that's not enough, far from enough. He needs more time to fully control this power. At that time, he is the strongest existence in the sea. Only qualified to set off that fantastic battle. And a legion composed entirely of capable people can buy him a lot of time. Thinking of this, Guy asked more. How's the situation on Jack's side? Has the latest batch of artificial devil fruits been delivered? Should be bad. Just as Zhu Wei was about to answer, suddenly a soldier rushed in a hurry. Not wanting to wipe the rain off his head, the soldier said to Guy more in horror. What a boss guy. Lord Jack he's dead. What did you say? Chapter 476 Dr. Vegapunk. The New World, the domain of Alien Jones. During this time, Turtle Island was much quieter, and it was difficult to see the construction atmosphere of the big strides in the past. In addition to the fact that K. Rockdale and Ulysses led the teams to go out to perform tasks and took away most of the cheap free labor, there is another reason that the construction of Turtle Island is almost completed. Counting the time, this is indeed a huge project. Considering the characteristics of the beast language fruit, the first task that Jones gave him after going out to sea was to find this giant island tortoise that could not be guided by a recording pointer. At that time, Loya was going to find a creature to use as his base because he was dizzy with the transportation, just like the war fortress of Germa 66 inches. And Jones also completed this task very well, and raised a lot of money by looting pirates, and ordered Ratchet, the former ruler of Turtle Island, to rebuild the original defensive layout of Turtle Island. After a few years, Turtle Island has truly become a fire fortress armed to Kiba's teeth. Although I don't know what the legendary, worst battleship, and the Pluto, one of the ancient weapons have, but the firepower on Turtle Island is enough to destroy the country. Especially the Dragon Roar cannon that can store magic power and launch it, the power of full power launch, even Roja is shocked when he sees it. Now that the construction is basically completed, the undead on Turtle Island will be idle. Let's talk about the best preservatives to use to maintain the body. and talk about the experience of how to avoid the incongruity of the severed limbs that were stitched back last time. Since his subordinates are so idle, Loya, as the ruler, of course. Well, he is quite busy. Dong dong dong. Come in. With permission, Robin pushed open the door and walked in with a pile of documents. The early morning sun was clear and charming, shedding a touch of golden light on the ground, and the breeze blew in along the open window, carrying the salty smell of the sea and blowing Loya's cloak. Putting a pile of materials in front of Loya, Robin wiped the dust on his hands and said, "All the materials that can be found are here, and even if we want to find the rest, there is absolutely no way to start now." There is no way to start does not mean that the rest of the information is strictly guarded by someone, relying on the current fighting strength of Turtle Island, except for a limited number of places. What can't you just push it horizontally? The question is really just 3 words. I don't know. Not to mention what's left, it's completely unknown to Akatsuki if there's anything left. Without a goal, even if Loya wanted to grab it, she didn't know where to start. So much. Looking at the pile of books with his own leg high, Loya's eyes widened in confusion. Then he quickly lowered his gaze, and a picture of a salted fish fell on the soft back of the chair. "Ah, I really don't want to look for it anymore. I've been looking for it for half a month and there's no sign. Are we going in the wrong direction?" Facing the boss's strike, Robin smiled slightly. The direction is not wrong, but even if it loses 100 years of history, the world still has 800 years of known records. What we do is like looking for a needle in a haystack. The hope is slim, but it exists. Quote. After a pause, Robin recalled the days of studying in O'Hara when he was a child, and said with some emotion, "Find clues from a few words, piece together the fragments into a complete picture, and then go to the field to verify. These are archaeology, homework. So I'm not some learned intellectual." Loya shrugged helplessly, and suddenly asked, "Where's Jones? What is he doing now?" Hearing the name, Robin stopped what she was doing, and after a while, she said quietly, "Maybe I feel guilty for you. He has locked himself in the house these days without eating or drinking. Searching for information day and night. Only 1/3 of what we have in front of us, and the remaining 2/3 are all taken over by him alone. Tisk, troublesome guy." In this regard, Loya also felt helpless. Even if he said that he would not have an opinion on him because of Zepha's affairs, after all, this was something he didn't know about, and the ignorant were innocent, but obviously Jones didn't think so. He believed that it was because of himself that it caused Zepha's serious injury. Although he was subdued by Loya's fist at first, until today, he can live with his last family, Minnie, all with Loya's help. Strictly speaking, Loya has no hatred for him, but has a great favor. Thinking about how he could willingly accept the enslavement of the Assos family for Minnie, who had not seen each other for decades, and who was not even sure whether he was alive or not, and fought for his life in Crisvia, you can know how much this is a serious guy. Knowing that the source of everything is actually in himself, Jones just wants to do something now to stop himself from being so self-blaming. If you want him to go back to his previous state, or go back in time, Loya will just pretend he doesn't know about it and won't tell him anything. It's a pity that he can only pause for a short time now, and he can't touch such a profound realm. Or, find the truth as soon as possible and free Jones from self-blame. Thinking of this, Loya patted his face, took out a book from the stack of books, and carefully checked it. Speaking of which, wouldn't Jones blame himself more if he knew he had delayed my plans because of his relationship? It's better not to think like that. Recalling the scene of Jones, an 8-foot rough man crying in front of them that day, Robin shuddered and stopped Loya from continuing to speak. Slowly, only the sound of flipping books was left in the room. Everything is so quiet and harmonious, indifferent to the world. It wasn't until the cheerful, blue mew sound of the phone bug rang that the picture finally flowed. Slap. Picking up the receiver, Loya's eyes stayed on the book. "Mosamoxi, who are you? Isn't this the hotline bug you gave me? Lord Loya. Oh, Ulysses. How's the mission? On the other end of the phone, Ulysses felt helpless, and for a moment, he even wondered if he had picked up the wrong phone. He secretly glanced at the mark on the phone bug, and after confirming that it was correct, he continued, "Everything is going well, and not only Geisa, but we also managed to catch some officials of Don Quixote's family. Flamingo's men." Luoya paused when he flipped the book in his hand, then nodded. "Calculate the time, he has already begun to cooperate with Geisa. It is understandable that this situation occurs. Come back when the task is completed, there is still a lot to do." Quote. "Yes, now we are preparing to leave. But Lord Loya, our actions this time seem to be exposed to many people's sight. One guy even came to the door and said that his master knows you." Oh. This time, Loya came to the spirit, closed the book, and Loya kept tapping his fingers on the table. "Who is it?" "Dr. Vegapunk. Chapter 477 Familiar Devil Fruits." Vegapunk. Hearing this name, Loya finally became serious. He thought of the bear, Blood Coon, of the Fallen Navy, Drake, of Germa 66 inches, of the Elephant Sword of CP9, of the Sad. He ordered his subordinates to destroy now. I remember a lot of things. This is a very mysterious scientist. He still did not appear in the comics until Loya crossed over, but his influence was everywhere, and the above-mentioned things were just the tip of the iceberg exposed in the small theaters of the original book. Vegapunk is known as a scientist who surpassed human wisdom for 500 years. He is the #1 scientist in the world government. From devil fruits to mechanical crafting, this man is a grandmaster, a true genius scientist. Although Geisa Kron always wanted to compete with him, but he couldn't reach the height of Vegapunk. Loya once saw this person from a distance when he sent the wave breaker back to the factory for maintenance after a mission, but the other side always followed a large number of naval forces and high-ranking government officials, even if he was already a lieutenant general at that time. Approaching is not allowed. Is it such a mysterious guy who actually sent someone to contact him at this moment? So, what exactly is he trying to do? After Ulysses finished speaking, Loya did not rush to answer. He thought about all possibilities in his mind, considering the gains and losses of contacting him. After a long time, Loya finally said, "Did he say anything?" Regarding this question, Ulysses shook his head regretfully. "There is nothing. After handing me a box, the other party chose to self-destruct. Even with the undead sword you gave, it cannot be resurrected. It seems it is also well prepared for this." Quote. "Blow up." Hearing this, Loya narrowed his eyes slightly. Although he has formed an army of undead, his need for resurrection has never been revealed to outsiders. Others thought that as long as he had a corpse, he could revive it, but no one in this world would know clearly about the twists and turns in the resurrection process. To resurrect an undead soldier, first of all, the soul of that person must still be preserved in the world. Otherwise, what he wakes up is just a movable body, just like the zombies in the West, except for the physical qualities in front of him, it is completely incapable of fighting. Then, since you want to accommodate the soul, then the corpse of the soul master also has corresponding requirements on the integrity. As the dwelling place of the soul, if there is not enough matching physical body, then it will also not be able to exert the corresponding strength. There's nothing wrong with being cut into pieces, it just takes a little time at most to piece it back together. However, if it was smashed into flesh in the explosion, even if Loa was on the spot, it would not be able to revive it. It was hard to imagine that Vegapunk, who had never met before, had studied so thoroughly about his means of resurrecting the undead. The name of a genius who has surpassed the world for 500 years is indeed well deserved. After a pause, Loya said slowly, "So, what's in the box?" Since the answer could not be found from the messenger, the only remaining direction was the box. Ulysses was indeed loyal. In order to beware of what bombs were in the box, he ordered someone to study the box early. Hearing Loya's question at this moment, Ulysses quickly replied, "Inside the box is a pile of sealed documents, an invitation letter that needs to be opened by you, and a devil fruit." Devil fruit. This series of things made Roja a little confused. On the surface, he is a devil fruit capable, and it is impossible to eat a second one. What does Vegapunk do for himself? And even if it is possible, Roja is absolutely reluctant to eat devil fruits. Seasickness has already made him miserable enough, and he doesn't want to add another land duck on top of it. Wait, is it an artificial devil fruit? Suddenly, Loya remembered the various legends of Vegapunk. Aside from his achievements in other aspects, the most terrifying thing about this person is that he discovered the blood factor, and can artificially create devil fruits. Could it be that this fruit is an artificial devil fruit? Although Vegapunk's purpose is unclear, the name alone is enough to arouse Roja's interest. But master, this fruit doesn't seem to be the artificial devil fruit you mentioned. Facing the question, Ulysses strangely denied Loya's idea, and then took out the box from the box. He took out the shit yellow pineapple and looked at the sand-like bumps on it. Also, you should also know this devil fruit. On the coast of Dressrosa, the bodies were put together and lit with tung oil. There are not only soldiers and officials of the Don Quixote family, but also the corpses of civilians, Mukuro. K-Roctal strictly carried out Loya's orders and meticulously cleaned up the corpse. As a plague lord, he is well aware of the horrific visions of the spread of the plague. In terms of combat power, he is not as good as Ulysses, but when it is used to destroy the country and massacre the city, 5 Ulysses are not as good as him, relying on the kind of transmission ability that belongs to the plague. Standing on the shore like him, in addition to the undead army, there are also various members of King Riku's lineage. Just this morning, all the toys in the city turned back into normal humans, and everyone's memories were restored. Even though the commoners were still afraid of this terrifying army of dead men, as a royal family, members of the King Riku lineage also attended the scene one by one to pay tribute to the heroes who saved the country. Even if it was just a revenge, they were rescued by the other side. By the way, the treasure of the flamingo was still shipped by K-Roctal. After a series of intrigues, the sad Violet found that his plan was still to make a wedding dress for others. After a lot of hard work, she finally opened the door of the treasure house, but before she could see what was inside, the vicious undead soldiers controlled her. After all, who would have thought that the corpses that died in the passage could actually move? Violet, who was caught off guard, watched them unwillingly as they took the treasure away and loaded it on his own ship. So at this moment, Violet stared at a pair of good-looking big eyes, trying to use his eyes to burn K-Roctal to ashes. But soon, King Riku with Madara white hair stopped her impoliteness and shook his head to signal her not to mess around. Take it away. These ill-gotten gains smeared with blood and tears by exploiting the villains and toys, they don't have the courage to use them with peace of mind. The royal family can be poor, but they cannot lose their bottom line as a royal family. Of course Violet understood this truth, otherwise he wouldn't be able to follow his father and niece on the shore of this lifeless coast. The fire was very strong, and the scorching airflow rose into the sky, scorching the air like coals of fire. Smelling the looming aroma of meat and scorching in the air, young Rebecca was the first to hold back and turned around and vomited. If you can't stand it, get out of the way. We are not here to be heroes, and we don't need your thanks. Rockdale dipped his cigar and glanced at them. Having said that, Lord K-Roctal, King Riku stepped forward and said solemnly, but your actions did save this country and my family. So here, please allow the old man to express my deep gratitude to you. Quote. PFF'd. Kneeling his knees on the stone, the old man who had slaughtered his own people, lost his daughter, and was reviled by thousands of people bowed his head deeply. Really, thank you, your kindness and great virtue, I will never forget it. Lord King. Father. Grandpa. Without looking at the chaotic scene behind him, K-Roctal bit his cigar and quietly looked at the sky. It is also regarded as a hero. Why is the feeling now so different from when it was in Alabasta? Chapter 478 Great News one after another. The matter of Dressrosa was quickly leaked out. The destruction of Tianyasha, the massacre of the undead army, the shocking late-night live broadcast, the death of Jack, drought, this series of major events, there is absolutely no way to hide it. News birds from various news agencies soared into the sky, spreading this fear and absoluteness to every corner of the sea. Those organizations that have been secretly engaged in the arms trade with Joker were reluctant to believe such exaggerated things at first, but when King Riku gave a speech and announced that he was going to re-enter the throne of Dressrosa, he would never again. No one doubts the veracity of things anymore. Then, there was a terrifying noise, starting from the various islands in the sea, spreading out madly. Ice Dragon, Loya betrayed the Navy. Many people and forces are trying to figure out what this legendary figure will do next. A war with the Navy. Are you fighting for territory with the four emperors? Is it to follow the trail of the big secret treasure? Or just ignore it and enjoy life like Whitebeard? There are various speculations, and there is no conclusion. But there is one thing that everyone agrees without guessing, that is, as a wanted criminal with the highest bounty in history, whatever he wants to do can definitely shake the world. The incident in Dressrosa was indeed as terrifying and jaw-dropping as everyone agreed. It's just that this fact is really unforgettable. One of the seven seas, the fall of Don Quixote da Flamingo, Tianyasha, the many confidants of the four emperors Guy, the fall of Jack, drought, no one cares about such big things. Everyone's eyes are on the terrifying undead army that was displayed in front of the world in this battle. A real army of dead men. Even though this world has all the weird abilities of the devil fruit, the appearance of the undead army still shatters the cognition of most people, and the three broken views cannot be fought back. Those guys whose behaviors and activities are no different from ordinary people or dead people. After this battle, Loya's prestige was unparalleled for a while, and even the usual pirate activities that were usually seen died down and fell silent. No one knows what Roja, who controls such a large army, thinks, but everyone knows that once Roja takes action against it, it will really be a disaster. At the moment when they are uncertain about the direction in the heart of the worst dragon, who has silenced the whole world, no one dares to jump out and be the first bird. The funny thing is, because of this unprecedented fear, an unprecedented situation has appeared in the whole world. On the day when the news spread throughout the sea, unprecedented peace came to this world. Silence the army, the world government, the navy, the four emperors, the local tyrants, the Tianlong people, everything seems to be still, just like those evil deeds and battles have never happened. Everyone is silent, everything is silent. Don't dare to say, don't dare to do anything. Then, the next day, the silent world was shattered by another piece of news, and a series of major incidents occurred in 1 or 2 days, causing the guy with unqualified psychological quality to pass out in a coma. The news that broke the silence was that the 5 old stars held an emergency meeting to discuss inviting the Antonio family to jointly lead the world government. The time is set in 3 months, and the location is the Holy Land Mary Joa. Generally, Shengdu Xiaomin may not be clear, but for any organization or individual with a certain status, who does not know the name of this first family in the world, that is a terrifying existence that absolutely cannot be offended even among the heavenly dragon people of the privileged class. The world government and the navy know very well that when Doflamingo requested to return to the Holy Land and seek approval from others, it was the Antonio family who directly threw him out of the Holy Land. That's just a housekeeper. An ordinary human butler who is regarded as a pariah by the Tianlong people and does not want to breathe the same air as him. However, even if they did such a thing, the Tianlong people seemed to be ignorant and dared not express any opinion on that lowly pariah. One can imagine what kind of rights the Antonio family has. What's more, the turmoil 10 years ago was caused by this family. After that, the Antonio family completely disappeared in front of the public, and the world government also regarded it as a taboo, and the attitude of guarding against it was no less than 100 years of blankness. But what happened now that this first family was going to enter the inner circle of the world government? Can anyone tell us what's going on? For a time, the eyes of the whole sea were condensed on the Holy Land Mary Joa, and on the unknown top officials of the world government. After Roger's death, The age of navigation is about to enter the end of its 20th year, and a terrifying undercurrent is slowly but firmly sweeping the world. Tea Party. Looking at the two identical invitations in his hand, Loya touched his chin and thought quietly. The first one was brought back by K. Rockdale, an invitation letter from the eldest son of the Antonio family from CP0. Then, there was an invitation from the world's first scientist, Dr. Vegapunk. The two even invited themselves to the Holy Land Mary Joa at the same time. What happened here? Today, Roha knows that the advantages of Akatsuki's original plot have been almost consumed. A butterfly flapping its wings can cause a storm thousands of miles away. And a series of effects brought by an ice dragon flapping its wings will only be more terrifying than a butterfly. The world now presented to Loya is already a world that has been completely transformed by magic. Those huge icebergs hidden outside the original comics are being torn open by him little by little, revealing the real world hidden inside. Every next step means that he will intervene in the world with his own behavior, and will never return to the previous situation. And as an opportunity to guide all this development, it is undoubtedly this hidden tea party. I don't know what to express, but the names of the other guests at the tea party were also engraved on the invitation letter one by one. The names of the world's top dignitaries are engraved with extravagant gold. Just the appearance of the names makes people feel a suffocating pressure. Under the banner of the world government, the commander-in-chief of the entire army, the steel bones are empty. The contemporary patriarch of the Antonio family, Antonio Caro. The eldest son of the Antonio family, Antonio Silla. Representatives of the members of the Tianlong family, Mephisto Middle, Muscarad Tiana. The head of the three great forces of the Great Root, the Marshal of the Navy Headquarters, Sengoku of the Buddha. The most important member of the Naval Science Force, a genius scientist who has led the world for 500 years, Dr. Vegapunk. And of course the organizers of this tea party, the power core of the world government, the five old stars. In the end, there is only a simple name, listed separately, without any single name of the affiliation. Christopher Loya. In all fairness, Loya did not think that he was qualified to join such a tea party. What if the size of the undead army is tens of thousands? What if Turtle Island's firepower slaughtered the city and wiped out the country? Whether it is power or power, his manpower cannot be compared with the above-mentioned people at all. If the Legion of the Dead wants to compare with them in this regard, there is still a long, long way to go. But helpless, even if there is no power, who told him to have strength? Loya had said as early as when Ivy was still using the system to help him grow up, that he would hang up the green pheasant after the dragon transformation. That's the truth. Now he, alone, is worth a top force. If it is just the power displayed by the Navy in the war on the top of the original book, Loya said that he can sweep it by himself. It's going to be a little tricky, but the chances are great. It is this kind of strength that makes him eligible to join such a meeting, which is truly on an equal footing with the peak of power in the world. Chapter 479 Summit Talk. This hidden tea party, unknown to the world, was held 1 month later and 2 months before the World Emergency Meeting. At this point in time, it's also worth exploring. To know the names that appear on the tea party list, if you take any of them out, ordinary people need to look up. No, a terrifying existence that cannot be directly looked at. Their gathering, no matter what is going to be discussed, just being in the same place will set off a monstrous wave on the sea. Therefore, the tea party was completely hidden, and even Eloha's current intelligence network could not detect any information. If he hadn't really received the invitation letter, Loya would have thought it was just a joke to laugh off the big Kiba. And during this 1 month, it was difficult for Loya not to doubt whether the other party set up a feast of hangmen, please kun into the urn. At that time, when the cup was thrown as an order, the prepared powerhouses appeared one after another, preparing to kill this special existence on the spot. However, the information sent by Vegapunk slightly dispelled the speculation in Loya's heart. Because the importance of that information is comparable to an ancient weapon, as long as the above content is confirmed, it will not only improve the power of Loya's subordinates. If the other party really intends to take this opportunity to destroy himself, how can he give this information to him? Also, there are 2 invitations. It's getting more and more interesting. What mysteries are still hidden in this world, and what is the reason for this move by the world government? Sitting on the large blue throne, Loya closed his eyes and fell into contemplation alone. In front of him, gathered all the cadres on Turtle Island. From the 2 commanders of the Undead Legion, to Drake, who is still fighting Oil, to the newly added Tony and Enelu and others, they are completely silent at this moment, not daring to make a sound, for fear of disturbing Loya's thoughts. They have already read the 2 invitation letters, and they also know the shocking information contained in them. Where they will go, it all depends on the leader they follow, the most legendary figure in the era of great voyages, Ice Dragon, Loya's choice. Just when the group was silent, Robin suddenly said, "Lord Loya, there is one thing I don't understand." The guys looked up at Robin and listened attentively. The relationship between Robin and Roha is somewhat unclear. If it is just a tool for understanding the ancient Akatsuki characters, Roha's attitude towards her is too laissez-faire. However, even if no one points it out, Robin's dependence on Loya's performance is clearly visible. Considering Loya's age, everyone had a tacit understanding and didn't make it clear, and let the situation develop. And on the other hand, as subordinates, it would be too disrespectful for them to interfere in Loya's private life. Hearing Robin's voice, Loya raised his eyelids. "Say. Since the names of Antonio Silla and Vegapunk are both at the tea party, why did they send 2 invitations? This kind of contradictory and even superfluous thing, is there some hidden secret language at the tea party?" Indeed, this is also the reason why Loya hesitates now. Obviously everyone is also a member of the tea party. Why did the Vegapunk and the Antonio family send 2 invitations at the same time? Coupled with the tricky relationship between the 5 old stars and the Tianlong people, it is difficult for Loya not to guess the true intention of it. Then what's your opinion? Robin has been exposed to a lot of things, and he is the one who knows the world government the most. Her ideas are indeed very valuable for reference. Facing the question, Robin sorted out his thoughts, and then gave the answer he guessed. It is very likely that the Antonio family on the Tianlong side, and the Vegapunk under the 5 old stars, are not in harmony with each other. Not as harmonious as we thought. Quote, "The top ruling class of the world government and the ruler of the world government are not harmonious." Robin's words were astonishing, and the answers thrown out shocked everyone. In this regard, Loya nodded expressionlessly. He knows the friction between the 5 old stars and the Antonio family, so he already has a very clear view on this answer. And Robin didn't know about it at all, and she could come to this conclusion just by her own speculation. It's no wonder that she became an excellent archaeologist who understands ancient writing at a young age. This kind of thinking and sharpness is indeed not something that ordinary people can have. Seeing Loya nodding, although he didn't know whether he agreed or not, Robin continued to say, "Although it is not certain whether this is a competition between the participants of the tea party, what is certain is that the news between the 2 it is not accessible, which is why we have 2 invitations to the tea party in our hands. It's conceivable that the results they want to seek are bound to be completely different, and they can't fight together." Then what's the conclusion? Looking at the gleaming light in Robin's eyes, Loya knew that she had already made plans in her heart, and immediately asked. "My conclusion is that even if things turn out to be the worst outcome we guessed, one of them will really be detrimental to you, Lord Loya, and the other will never allow this kind of thing that benefits the other to happen. Since the 2 sides are willing to sit down and discuss, the inevitable outcome is that you are not alone in this trip. Whether it is the 5 old stars or the Tianlong people, there must be one party who is standing with you." Clap clap clap. After hearing this point of view, Loya couldn't help but applaud. Great debate. The rest of the people looked at Robin with astonishment, and admired her clear thinking at the moment. Even Simon of the Golden Fox family did not dare to despise Robin. Even he can't do better with this ruthless thought. The sea is vast, and there are indeed many talented people, far from being able to overlook everything from his nest in the Weston family. After the applause ended, Loya picked up the yuhi tea that Ulysses offered, and took a sip. Go, I'm definitely going. Even if the two sides really want to fight against me, what should I be afraid of? To this day, am I still afraid of them? It's a big deal, and both sides will suffer. Dare to invite me to the Holy Land, marry Joa, then you have to plan for it to become a grave. Today's Loya has the confidence to say these words. The ultimate mystery of the Ice Dragon Slayer magic Mokobatmo has been thoroughly familiar with him, plus the ability to interfere with reality as a foreign object. If he wants to leave, no one can keep him. At the Navy headquarters that day, the power of one punch shown by Garp really made him jealous, but no matter how strong Garp is, he is only a part of this fantasy world. As a pawn in the game, how did he resist the outsiders? Big hand. So Loya is invincible. If the world government and the Tianlong people are so bold, then he doesn't mind putting aside his own principles and bestowing despair and fear on this world. Chapter 480 Vegapunk's Gift. 3 more, please subscribe. In the face of Loya's domineering speech, the rest of the people have nothing but admiration. Only this legendary figure in front of him is qualified to make such remarks to look at the world. Well, now that you're sure you're going, I'll go back and do a few more filings to make sure we have enough cards to turn the table upside down at all times. It was Simon who said this. He is very powerful now, but there is still a big gap between him and Rockdale and others. His positioning of himself has changed from a sniper at the beginning to a think tank under Loya. As a think tank, of course, these issues must be considered. But before leaving, Simon still said one more sentence. If possible, let's solve the problem through more exchanges. I believe that with your current strength, they will definitely be afraid. The destruction of the Tianlong people will inevitably bring about a turmoil that will sweep the whole world. How many people will die and how many civilians will be among them? If there is a choice, Simon does not want to see the whole sea stained with blood. Yuhi that day. In response, Loya sat back on the chair with an inexplicable smile on his face. If the truth makes sense, what's the point of violence? It's true that violence can't solve all problems, but without violence, you can't solve any problems in this world. Simon turned over the Byakugan helplessly, completely unable to refute this. For example, the 2 invitations on the table now, didn't they appear there because of Loya's power? This statement is indeed good, but in general, it still feels inexplicably inappropriate. After the meeting, K. Rockdale was left alone by Loya, and the two carefully read the information that Vegapunk gave to Loya, which could greatly increase the power of Loya. This thick data is actually just an experimental report, and it looks no different from what Ratchet carried out experiments on weekdays. However, the experiment described in it made K. Rockdale's eyes suddenly widen. Because the above record is a series of experiments about making items possess the ability of devil fruit. The final result has been noted that this experiment has a 100% success rate under certain circumstances. Think about it, how many devil fruits there are in this world. I am afraid no one can say this number clearly. Even the so-called all-knowing and almighty devil fruit atlas is constantly revised and sorted every year. With such a large number of devil fruits, it is certain that not all of them will be eaten. Even if there is 1/10 of it remaining, it is a terrifying number on the undead army. Yes, regarding this experiment, Vegapunk's latest opinion is that the undead under Roha can also possess the power of devil fruit. What will happen to the undead who eat the fruit? The answer has long been known to Akatsuki by Loya. God knows how the devil fruit is judged. Anyway, all the devil fruits used for the experiment disappeared, and the undead who participated in the experiment did not show any abnormality. It wasn't until one day that they found the devil fruit that should have been eaten at sea, and Loya finally determined that the undead ate the devil fruit. It was absolutely useless. But now Vegapunk's information tells him that he can use a special method to turn the undead into a devil fruit person. Once this experiment is successful, the overall strength of the undead army will be improved, and the effect will be obvious. Holding that information, K-Rochdal was a little excited. Although he is already familiar with the power of the plague today, he has been a person with the ability of the rustling fruit in his life, and the power he is most familiar with must be the ability of the natural fruit. Coupled with a battle with Jack and Doflamingo, he became more aware of his current situation. It's not that he has no confidence to keep up with Loya's pace, but that there is a shortcut in front of him. Why not go? The starting point and the advantage of the route are also a kind of strength. Only a guy who is behind and unable to catch up will make the rubbish remarks that, there is no shortcut to everything. Then use those shortcut guys who have failed and died as negative teaching materials to strengthen their beliefs. However, when others become negative teaching materials, the group of guys who are like themselves, one step at a time, will only fall in more numbers. Which is better and which is worse? This is a wise man sees wisdom and benevolence sees benevolence. Moreover, there is no regret in K-Rochdale's heart. After seeing the various powerhouses in the New World, he was quite dissatisfied with himself in the past. It was indeed an insult to develop such a powerful natural ability as Shasha fruit. If there is an opportunity to make up for it, why should we still cherish the past with regret? And now, this opportunity is in front of him. Looking at K-Rochdal, who was staring at him, Loya took out the rustling fruit sent by Vegapunk and asked, "How about it? Do you have the guts to give it a try?" "Of course I can't ask for it. There is still some time before the tea party starts, and with Loya's position and flight speed, he can catch up with the departure on the same day." So for the next period of time, a group of people began to study the information left by Vegapunk. Of course, this also requires the assistance of the gas fruit person, who can be regarded as a very accomplished scientist, Geisa Brown. Being able to serve as the second in command in Vegapunk's team, this guy's scientific research strength is obvious to all. After learning that the research was done for K-Rochdale, Geisa's resistance to Vegapunk has become much less of a problem. After all, he also counted on the help of K-Rochdal, the Plague Lord, who crushed him in terms of poison gas and plague, to develop a truly devastating biochemical weapon. It is worth mentioning that, also as captives, the two sisters, Sugar and Monet, had a very uncomfortable life. Doflamingo, who Monet believed so deeply, swore allegiance to Doflamingo, who believed that he would become the Pirate King, gradually turned into nothingness in front of her eyes, and even his soul was wiped out under the magic of Loya. Losing the target to follow, Monet's heart is ashes, and he has lost the motivation to live. Loya is already considering whether to get rid of this admirable woman, and granting death to the enemy after failure is sometimes not cruel, but a kind of kindness. Now with the help of Sugar, Monet has also slowly accepted the fact, and the lifeless expression has begun to come alive again. Whether it can become Loya's combat power depends on her final determination. But these are things to come later. The most urgent task now is to transfer the ability of Shasha fruit to the dead body of K-Rochdal. So early the next morning, Loya came to Ratchet's laboratory, preparing to make one of the essential requirements for the experiment. A large enough seafloor stone-sealed space. However, here, he found a guy he seldom saw. A person with the ability to wring the thunder fruit, the lion head who calls himself the God of Thunder, the former ruler of the kingdom of the Sky Island God, and the God of African chiefs, Anilu.